Plug in, log on, let's break it down. Truth ain't scared to be found. Dogma shakes when questions rise. No more fear, no more lies. Cyber deconstruction, let's get real. Faith when challenge starts to peel. If it's built on solid ground, why is it scared to stick around? Sacred text, twisted views. Time to separate lies from truth. Not here to burn, but here to see what survives when the mind breaks free. Deconstruct, analyze, open hearts, open eyes. If it falls, let it be. What remains is meant to be. Cyber deconstruction, let's get real. Faith when challenge starts to peel. If it's built on solid ground, why is it scared to stick around? Not for hate, but for the wise. Truth won't shatter, only lies. Time to start the conversation. Now ain't the time to pretend nothing happened.
How is everybody doing? How is everybody doing? Checking things out. I just got a new mic. I actually had one of my subscribers sent me a mic, so I'm testing it out. So let's give some W's, and you'll hear this throughout this live and probably for the next few lives. But is TTV _ Atheist Gamer 6. They stream their games on Twitch, and it's twitch.tv / Atheist _ Gamer 6. So if you watch game streams, go give them a follow. If not, then hey, I'm just giving them a shout out. They sent me some equipment, and I've been super grateful for it. And then let me get my camera turned on real quick. Right. Oh, that is not my camera. Wrong one. Should I have the camera popping up now? The graveyard awaits more dust. See you there. Maybe, possibly. But so hey, let's get some debates on. If you disagree, I believe Christianity is false. If you disagree, hop in the box. I would definitely love to chat with you. Hop in the box. Let's talk about it. Hello, Joe. How you doing, Emily? Gonna see if TikTok Live Studio wants to cooperate when I'm using Live Studio. Never likes to cooperate whenever I'm running through OBS. So let's see, we've got Emily requesting in, so we'll bring Emily up.
Hola.
Hello, let me get you turned on so they can hear you, because I don't think chat can hear you right now. get this opened up. And go ahead and say something, Emily.
Can they hear me? Hello?
Yep, they can hear you now. How are you doing?
Awesome. I'm good. How are you?
I can't complain. And then we're going to bring up Heavenly Father. I think they are in requests as well. We're going to get them brought on up. And Heavenly
Peace and
Father,
blessings.
how you doing today?
Perfect as usual.
Yeah, can I get your age?
Okay, so when you talk about Christianity, you have to come from a spiritual
That's not
perspective,
what
not earthly.
hold on. That's not what I asked. Can I get your age?
Asking me my age is an earthly question, so you already kind of like going down the wrong path.
Oh yeah, if you don't give
from
me
an
your
earthly
age, I'm just going to kick you because it's for TikTok terms and services, my dude. It's not because I care about your age. It's because TikTok cares about your age.
All right, that's respectable. 30.
All right. And are you a Christian?
Yes.
All right. So Emily and I are firm believers that Christianity is false. What's your strongest argument that it's true?
Without words, you will have no point. And John 1:1 says, in the beginning was the word that existed before creation. So without words, you don't exist. Or your opinions.
Oh, I would just disagree. Because premise one, without words, there's no existence. Premise two, I'm currently talking with words. Premise three, you can in fact exist without words. Premise, right? So it just works. I'm fine. I can talk. It doesn't go through.
Well, the Christian Bible says that the word was God. So without words, there is no God or you.
Are you trying to say that God created language?
You said that.
No, I'm asking you, are you saying that God created language?
Man's not intelligent enough to do anything but die.
What? I don't think that was a response to my question.
I will rather talk to the host. I don't talk to women because they have a covenant with the serpent.
What? That is
Satan,
wild. That is
Wait.
wild.
It's biblical.
Wait, hold on.
It's biblical.
What do you have against?
You have
what do you have against women?
What do you have against men?
Did I say I had anything against men? Can you explain to me what you have against women?
Your question says that you're dividing by saying that I have a problem against women, but
well, I mean, you literally were just up here saying I don't talk to women. So I mean, what am I supposed to?
For the sake of the cyber deconstruction? Yeah, this is the only reason why I'm talking to you, because he's like, allowing me to be respectful to you. So
Okay,
women.
I mean that's fine, but you're still not responding to my question. You came up here.
Why should I respond to a woman?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. You're saying that why should I respond to a woman?
I would rather talk to the host.
And then I'm responding. And then
respectfully.
I'm responding.
Respectfully, I would rather talk to the host.
The host allowed me up to talk.
Women were created for men.
Me
so
for being a woman, I'm gonna respond.
Victim.
I'm sorry, you
Oh, absolutely the fuck not. Out of every single brain-rotted reaction TikToker, this has to be the absolute worst. I demand that you crawl back into whatever basement you call home and never come back out. Dirty-ass boy, I bet you leave fingerprints on Oreos. And your voice, good God, it sounds like a cross-faded version of Alvin and the Chipmunks. Don't you dare let me see this shit again.
All right, so Emily's my co-host. So
okay, I didn't know that until now. So respectfully,
she interjects.
Yeah, I can engage. Yes, sir. I can engage with her now that you've given her permission to engage with me. Okay, Emily, let's start over. How are you doing today?
That is crazy.
That is
I'm
wild.
Sorry. Wait. I'm gonna just.
Hey, the host. It's the host panel. I didn't know you were a co-host.
I'm gonna just ignore the blatant misogyny.
Thank you. You look more beautiful ignoring.
I don't care.
You're more beautiful that way.
Can you just be quiet for a second? I don't care if you think that I'm beautiful.
I'm gonna drop down because
I'd run too.
I'm gonna
No, I'm not.
Ignore.
Oh,
I'm
running?
gonna ignore the
I'd rather
obvious
engage.
misogyny
I'd rather engage
that
with
is
the
in this
host. I don't want
live.
to talk to you
Can
because your
you
husband didn't give you permission to talk to me.
okay,
So
I don't
maybe you should ask your husband
I don't
before you
give
speak to
I
me.
don't give a crap. Hold on,
He's.
hold on. Okay, I don't give a crap, right?
We know you don't.
Can
So
you
let's talk to
please
the host.
can you please can you let me have a word in? Oh my
You
god.
don't give a crap. So why would I listen to someone who doesn't give a crap? I'd rather
If
listen to
you
the host
mute
and
for
try
more
to
than
build
5
something.
seconds, you'll hear my point. Okay?
Let's talk about why
And
Christianity
that
is
is
false, not your opinions. Thank you.
and that is okay, is your God not
Christianity is false.
benevolent? Can you
Why?
answer my question? Is your God not benevolent?
God is gracious. God is merciful. All those
Okay,
things.
so your God is benevolent, correct?
You said that.
No, you said that. So
I
is
never
your
used the
God
word
not
benevolent.
benevolent? Is your God not benevolent?
That's a dictionary word that a man created.
So God's not all loving?
Whatever you say.
Well, I mean, according to you being a Christian and according to the Christian faith, they believe in an all loving God. That is, if you follow the Christian faith, you would have to subscribe to the notion that you believe in a benevolent God. And if that
That
is the
means you don't. That
case,
means you don't
you're
have
not
love.
acting like a very good Christian
That
when
means
you're
you don't
up
have love.
here
Oh,
promoting nothing but
gaslighting.
hate.
Typical human behavior. Okay, go ahead.
No, I
Next.
mean that is basically you being a disingenuous Christian. I'm sure a lot
Sure,
of
whatever you
Christians are
say.
watching
Sure,
you.
whatever you say.
They're embarrassed as hell because you're not
Sure,
acting very
gaslighting.
Christ-like.
Typical human behavior.
Hey, what's the
I mean,
Gaslighting.
definition of
so much
gaslighting?
to love thy neighbor.
I'd rather talk to someone with cyber deconstruction in their name.
Can you give me the definition of gaslighting?
Lying is the same thing.
Oh, it's not the same. Gaslighting's a specific thing. It's not just lying.
Well, that's human perspective. I'm rather talk about the God perspective so that we can prove that Christianity is true, not false. Humans don't believe in anything but the graveyard and vainglory and monopoly money. They work for nothing.
Yeah. So what's your strongest argument that Christianity is true?
Strongest argument that Christianity is true?
Yeah.
The graveyard.
And how does that prove Christianity's true?
Because this proves that people who don't acknowledge God don't exist eventually.
Oh, that's not true. I don't believe in God, and I exist.
Temporarily.
Oh yeah, we are firm believers. That when we pass away, that's it. It's lights out. There's no more. There's nothing after that. Congratulations.
So why are you
know, you
speaking?
understand atheism.
So why are you speaking for nothing? Who do you speak for? Atheism?
I speak for myself. I speak for myself. Emily speaks for herself.
Neither one of you created yourself, so that's a fallacy in itself. So you don't speak for yourself.
No,
we
weren't created. I mean, nothing was created. Can you show me evidence that we were created?
The fact that you are calling God a liar shows that you are a creation temporarily.
Oh yeah, what's your evidence that I'm a creation? Give me that argument.
You're here today, and you may be not here tomorrow.
Correct. Yeah, it's just stating the
Right.
claim. It's circular argument. So what's your argument that humans were created? Go ahead. Here, better yet, I'll give you an argument. I'll give you an argument real quick to show that the universe has just always existed and that we just didn't come from nothing, right? So premise 1 is going to be that all creation entails a change of states. Premise 2, a change of state.
We came from words.
Well, you can't substantiate that. Sure. What's your argument for that? What's your argument for that?
You're the evil that God created. You're the evil that God created.
Yeah, that's a nice statement. What's your argument for that?
You're proving that by speaking further.
I'm not proving it. You just need to give me an argument that this is the case.
Well, if you don't acknowledge God, you won't be acknowledged.
Yeah, give me the argument for that.
The graveyard has your last name on a tombstone already.
Yeah, you're doing a whole lot of yap, but you're not giving me any sustenance. Do you think you're looking good in this dialectic right now? You're getting your back absolutely blown the fuck out right now.
Sure, you have a great imagination, but your name's
So
on
yeah,
the tombstone already.
can you give me
I'm sure
an
you've seen it.
can you lock in? Can you lock in and get back to the argument? Like I just want an argument that humans were created. Go ahead, give me that argument.
You weren't here before you were born.
Correct. You should have received this talk, and maybe we blame it on the American education system. I don't know. But it is the case that about 9 months before you were born, your mom and your dad really liked each other, and they probably
No, we're
went
talking
to
about
the
you.
back of an
We're not talking
alley
about your
and
mom
they
and dad. No, 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 no,
flapped,
no. We're talking about
and
you,
then you were
not your
created.
mom and dad.
No, I'm talking
We're talking
about
about
you
you.
and how you
not-
were
You
created.
can't talk about the past doesn't exist. You're already here, so you can't talk about
Oh,
before you
I'm
were born.
I believe in B theory of time, my dude. The past is just as real as today. But
How
good
do you
try though. That
prove
was a
that?
good try though.
How do you prove that George Washington exists?
Oh, I mean that's a nice pivot. That is a real nice pivot. But yeah, I'll
Thanks.
engage in this. Yeah, we can know that George Washington existed because we have the writings of his contemporaries. We have his military records from not only
Oh,
the colonial
ink,
military, but we
ink,
have hold on. But we
ink.
have his
Okay.
military records. Yeah, ink. We have his
Ink
military records
proves
from
that
Great
a man
Britain.
exists.
Yeah, it does. We have his teeth, we have artifacts, and we have his
So then
contemporaries
that
writing
also
about
proves
him.
that Jesus Christ exists.
Oh no. See, you didn't understand where
Thank
the
you.
ink needs. Hold on,
Oh,
you
no?
don't
Okay,
understand where
okay,
the.
go.
Yeah. The ink needs to come from contemporaries, right? Do you know what a contemporary is?
I know that man authored all books.
That's
what
not
you're
a
gonna say?
question. That's not the answer. The question was, do you know what contemporaries are? You know what that definition is?
It's a. I don't acknowledge Webster's dictionary definitions of words.
Oh, it's
I
not
only acknowledge the word
Webster's.
of God.
Oh, you only acknowledge the word of God. So are you okay
Yeah.
with slate? You must be okay with unaliving children then and genocide. You must be perfectly okay with that.
God kills and makes alive. He does both.
Yeah. It makes God a sick fuck, I think.
Haven't you been sick and haven't you fucked before? You're a sick fuck too.
Oh yeah, because I'm a human, and we as humans, that tends to be the case that we are, which is what we would expect in a naturalistic world. We
Who
shouldn't
told you was
expect that
human?
though.
Who told you you was
Yeah,
human?
it's
Another man?
genetics.
So you worship men.
Oh, I don't worship man. I can look at evidence myself. But here, I'm going to run you through a little syllogism, though, and we're going to see. I'm going to show you, and you're probably going to end up admitting yourself that God actually didn't create anything. So premise 1 is going to be that creation entails a change of states. Premise 2, a change of states is a progression of time, a change of states is a progression from one state to another. The progression of states is time. Do you agree or disagree with any of these premises?
Since creation, God has proved his eternal power with the sky.
Oh, that's not the question, but that's a nice dodge. That's dodge number 1. So I'll ask the question again. Premise number 1 is going to be all creation entails a change of states. Premise 2, a change of states is the progression from one state to another. Premise 3, the progression of states is time. Are there any of these premises that you disagree with?
Humans are
That's
yet
dodge
to
number
evolve.
2.
Everything
That's
else,
dodge number 2.
everything
We'll ask
has
you for
evolved
a third
except
time.
humans.
We'll ask a third time. We'll ask for a third time.
Wait, before you ask a third time, can you at least acknowledge what I said?
No, because you got to engage with the premises. See, we don't move on. That'd be called a pivot and me accepting the burden. And we're not burden shifting here. So it's going to be premise 1 is going to be that all creation entails a change of states. Premise 2, a change of states is a progression from one state to another. Premise 3, the progression of states is time. Is there any one of these premises that you disagree with?
Humans have been selling and buying free shit since they got here.
He has
All
to
right,
be
yeah.
trolling.
Yeah, that doesn't answer.
Guest has
Hey,
to be trolling.
he has to be. I do have a quick question though.
Who told you? Wait. Who told you I was
Oh,
trolling? Did I say that?
You are, but what's the name of your god? You actually, do you want to know who I believe in? I'll
You
tell you who I
believe in
believe
the
in.
words that you speak.
Say his name and he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry. I believe in Joe Hendry.
That guest was wild.
I'm sorry. Like, what? what planet was he on? He wasn't responding to anything that any of us was saying. Like, I mean, Jesus Christ.
Imagine, being the cop that pulls him over, or being the judge that has to see him in court over a speeding ticket.
Yeah, I hope it's not a woman, because, he hates women
Yeah,
and all.
officer, I'm not talking to you. You're a woman. I'm going to need your husband over here giving you permission to talk to me.
Yeah, it's like crazy. Like, at one point I was like, yo, Saba, why don't you just explain what I just said? Maybe he'll listen to you as, somebody that's not a woman.
That was definitely worse than freaking Jordan Peterson's live.
Like, that came out of nowhere. Like, that was crazy, because typically, like, I would expect this when I do my lives on, like, feminism, where people just automatically assume that I'm just hating men with my prompt. But, like, we're not even doing that. I'm talking about religion, and all of a sudden it's like, boom, and I'm like, that was so random.
Random. Hello, Crimson Flame. Can I get your age?
Hey. Yeah, I'm 50 years old.
And are you a Christian?
Yeah, I am.
All right. What is your strongest argument for Christianity being true?
And before you answer, you do not hate women, right?
Of course not.
Just,
What kind of question
alright,
is
just
that?
want to make sure that if I interject, we're not going to have the same thing as Alaska's. Continue.
My strongest evidence is the fact that I am who I am today because of it. Now, before you say that that's not any good, but that's personal in this, and that's exactly what it is, and I agree. It is my personal event that changed me, that gave me my faith. And that's what it is. And if you can't accept that, that's fine. But you cannot tell me that it is not valid because it's valid for me. Just because it's not valid for you does not mean it's no less valid for me.
So what part of this, because like when we look at the gospel of Jesus Christ, it's broad. We have, what was it, the atonement portion of it? Was it the miracles? Was it the sayings that he said? Was it what he's quoted as saying? Which one is it specifically? Like, which one of the three was like the most convincing and compelling, and you said, you know what, that's it, that's why I need to convert?
None of the above. It's the event that he worked in my life before I even knew what Christianity was. He intervened in my life, changed everything about me.
Right. So what about, well, real quick. So what about people of other faiths who have a similar experience, right? We got like currently right now, Islam seems to be the fastest growing religion on the planet. Islam is set to surpass Christianity probably within the next 10 to 20 years. It's going to surpass Christianity. And Muslims are going to say the exact same things. People that practice Hinduism, Buddhism, they're going to say the same things, where Buddhism doesn't have deities, but in like Hinduism and other things, they're going to have instances where their deities stepped in, changed their lives. In Buddhism, it's going to be more of the word of Buddha in their scriptures. Those change their lives. Or karma, where they've done good deeds and they've felt the response from the karma, and thus they were convinced that way. So what's to say that these religions aren't wrong, or aren't also right? Sorry, aren't also right.
Well, I would venture to say that in every other faith, religion, whatever you want to label it as, you have to do works to achieve salvation or enlightenment, or whatever it is the end goal is. You have to do something for that. It's earned. It's not freely given. Whereas Christianity, it's freely given. All you have to do is accept.
Well,
You
but
don't have
here's
to
the thing,
go out
though.
here and do thousands of different things. All you got to do is accept.
Well, the problem that you're going to run into is that accepting is work, right? In order for us to be convinced, right? There's not like any amount of evidence. Well, first I'm gonna have to look at evidence, right? I'm gonna have to study it. It's gonna have to convince me, right? And if the evidence just doesn't convince me, which is something that is beyond my control, we don't choose to be convinced by evidence or not be convinced. It's either we are or we're not by looking at it. That takes work. And let's say, for whatever reason, I have been convinced that if I do not become Christian, that I'm going to go into a lake of fire. Well, I've now got to do work in order to believe in Christ. So it is the case that there are works involved.
So you
And
think?
I wouldn't classify it to be freely if the alternative is like being in a pit of hell. I think that's like could be classified as coercion. Like if you're standing at a crossroad and God says, listen, in order to avoid being in hell, you must believe in me and follow all of this. I mean, that's not really free choice, is it? Right? No one's going to choose to go in a pit of fire in hell, are they? That's not going to be a reasonable choice that anyone would want to make. So then they're coerced in based on the conditions that God provides in Christianity.
Let me put it to you like this. God forbid this actually happen. The world is in a flood situation. I come to you with a boat. Now, there is no God. We're taking God out of this. Okay? There is no God. But I come to you because the world is in a flood situation. I come to you with a boat that is perfectly sound and it floats and it's great. Right? But you don't like the way I present the boat to you. So you refuse the boat. Then you drowned. Who is it that drowned you?
So
Me
the issue,
or you?
well, the issue with this is that we're going to be able to inspect this boat. We're going to be able to look at it and see that it is perfectly sound. But the issue is that when we take a look at the scriptures, we find that the scriptures are not sound. They're full of scientific errors. They're full of contradiction. They're full of lies. In fact, God,
science contradicts itself every day.
Well,
Wait,
science
hold
doesn't-
on. Let me provide like an analogy. Imagine if they came with you boats, but the boat at the bottom had a little hole, which means that if you got in the boat, it would eventually sink and you'd end up drowned. Is that boat effective or ineffective?
See, I can poke holes in anything. Okay, and
No,
that's
but
a
you'd
given.
say
No,
that
no,
it's
no,
ineffective, right?
Hang on.
You'd say it's ineffective, though, right?
But I said the boat was perfectly sound. So
Yeah,
now
but
you're
that's
trying
based
to
on
change.
what
You're
you
trying
believe.
to change the narrative.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You're
but
trying
that
to
is
change
that
the
is
narrative.
based on your perception. You
I'm
perceive it to be.
giving you a boat that is perfectly sound, has 0 holes in the hull, no cracks, no nothing. It is perfect. I made this blatantly clear. It is a perfect boat. You refuse the boat because you think, because you see a little bit of water down along the keel on the inside of the boat, well, it must be leaking and I'm going to drown anyway. So why take
no,
the boat?
no. That's not the case here. The case here is that when we inspect this boat, like first of all, if I get in that boat and we don't see land for miles, and I notice that there is a leak in it, we're doomed anyway. So sure, if I'm in it, we're doomed. So I might just try to swim to shore myself. Especially when we get further inspecting, and it's not just a little bit of water in there. In fact, there's quite a few holes. There's a big gaping hole in it. And in fact, you're convinced that there's only a little bit of water in it, but it's already 3/4 of the way full when we take a look at it, right? And so this is what we see with the Bible. For example, do you want me to show you a space where God, who created
show me your gaping hole as far as how Christians are so enamoredly stupid.
Yeah, I'll show one of
that's
those.
essentially what you're saying.
Yeah, I'll show you where Christians are stupid. Yeah, I'll show that. It's not a problem.
But don't get mad when I turn around and show you where you're stupid, because that's what you atheists love to do. When we start getting angry about things, but you guys can get angry when we start poking holes in what you believe. But when we get angry because you're poking holes in what we believe, you guys want to say, oh, well, see, there's that Christian love. There's that Christian love. Don't you just love how much there's no love like Christian hate? And you preface it at our anger at you telling us how stupid we are.
Well, we don't
We
care if you
can't express
criticize.
anger.
We don't care if you criticize our opinion. And
Oh, but you do, because every time we do these
Cyber,
things, you get
hold
angry
on,
at us.
hold on. While
But we
Cyber's just
can't
getting
get
up,
angry at you guys.
hold on. While Cyber's getting up the verses, I just wanted to point out, if your analogy is supposed to suggest that God is somehow a perfect being, then just think on this context. How can a perfect being create a world that is imperfect? Right? Because that is
Because the
essentially
world
what
was
you're
not
trying to
created
say.
imperfect.
Is that
It
God
was
is
not
somehow
created
perfect,
imperfect.
but yet we live in an imperfect world. So make that make sense to me. But go on, Cyber.
And while
The
we're here,
world was
if
not
you go to this
created
website,
imperfect.
hold on, shh. If you go to this
Oh, yes,
website, you can get 40% off your necklaces, apparently. So go get your 40% off. So my question is, God created all the animals, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and and God also gave the law to Moses, correct?
Yeah.
So if I'm able to find where God doesn't know or understand the creatures that he created, he either
Oh, you're
doesn't
going to
know
go to the
them.
rabbit eating his cud, right?
Yep, we're going to
Because
go to
that's
the rabbit
every
eating his
time.
cud.
Let's just go to that one scripture.
Yeah.
Rabbits don't chew cud. But
Well, it's
clearly,
not.
scripture
Hold
says
on. It's
rabbits
not
chew
only
their
rabbits.
cud.
Hold on. It's not only rabbits. It's also rock badgers. Rock badgers don't even turn around and eat their poop like rabbits do. Because I know you'll try to go to where rabbits eat their poop, but rock badgers don't do that, right? So this is going to be the issue. Is we got two animals here, two of them that actually don't chew their cud, and this is God telling this to Moses, right? So if God is telling this to Moses, there's absolutely no reason why God should have got this wrong.
Give me the rock badger scripture, and it best say rock badger instead of any
It
other
is.
animal.
It's on the screen. You can look at it. It's on the screen for you right now.
I can't see that. I can't see that.
You can't see the screen?
My eyes are very bad.
Yeah, it's
I don't have
Leviticus. Yeah, it's Leviticus 11, 5 through 6. The rock badger, for even though it chews the cud, it does not have divided hooves. It is unclean for you. The hare, for even though it chews the cud, it does not have divided hooves. It is unclean for you.
Okay, so I'm going to sit here and I'm going to tell you, yep, you're right. There is no God. We're all going to go poof and turn into
W
nothing.
concession?
No, that's not a concession. That's just me being facetious. It's funny how you don't understand what facetiousness is.
Oh, I know you're being facetious. But this should be a glaring hole in your argument. A glaring hole. The fact that God doesn't know that rock badgers and rabbits don't chew cud. That should be a glaring hole. I take one look at that and run as far away from that as possible.
Well, I'm going to say this. You know, God is smart.
Let me ask you another question. Hold on. I got another one for you. I got another one, right? Because we look at a compilation of evidence, right? We don't just look at one thing and say, that's it. We look at a bunch of things. So quick question for you. And I'm not trying to get you on like a flat earth thing.
I can't even answer the first question first.
Well, you didn't. You're just trying to yap. There's no question to be asked. I didn't ask a question. So my next question is, do you believe the earth is spheroid?
I don't know. I'm a stupid Christian. You have to tell me these things, remember?
Oh, I mean, I would say the earth is spheroid and it goes around the sun, but this is a critique of your worldview. So I need to know what your beliefs are, right?
I don't have a belief. Remember, I'm a stupid Christian.
So you're just gonna check out the dialectic? You got freaking your hair pulled so hard that you're just done with the dialectic? You're like, I can't do anymore.
When he's talking about the heavens and the earth being divided and the four corners of the earth, and all of that. Well, he's saying that the Earth is flat, but obviously it's round. That's exactly the argument you're going to go. Now, answer me this:
no,
since you're so smart, how can you go east and never go west?
I legit said I wasn't going to go the flat Earth route. I just needed to know what your view was. I see know what your view was for this next question. That doesn't have anything to do with flat Earth. It's not a flat Earth question. So I'm gonna. So if you want to go ahead and unmute.
Enlighten me, O great one. All should bow down to the great knowledge of you.
Yeah, so you believe the Earth is a sphere, correct? And that it travels around the sun, correct?
Obviously.
All right. What would happen, do you think, if the Earth ever stood still? Like if it just stopped rotating, what do you think would happen?
Well, you would lose gravity, but I guess you're going to go where God stopped the Earth or stopped the sun in the sky for X amount of hours, right?
That's exactly
see, that was God doing that, and God can do that because that is God.
Hold on. That's exactly where we're going to go, right? So we're going to go there, and the issue that you're going to run into with this is, let's get this brought up. So we'll go here where they're going to war, and it says, on the day when the Lord gave the Amorites over to the Israelites, Joshua spoke to the Lord, and he said, in the sight of Israel, sun, stand still at Gibeon, and moon in the valley, and the sun stood still and the moon stopped, until the nations took vengeance on their enemies. Is it not written in the book of Jasher? The sun stopped in mid-heaven and did not hurry to set for about a whole day. So we have 24 hours where the sun doesn't set. Now, there's a few issues with this. Issue number one is, do you know what would happen if the Earth actually stopped spinning?
Well, as I said, I assume that gravity would stop and everybody would float off into space.
Well, gravity wouldn't stop. Gravity wouldn't stop because gravity is just mass attracting mass. But if the Earth suddenly stopped spinning, it'd cause atrocities. It'd cause calamities, right? But not only that, how come we have no records of this? We have no records anywhere of anybody experiencing this 24-hour sun. That's a phenomenon that definitely would have been written about, and it's just not. Nobody writes about it.
Well, wasn't it written about because it's in the Bible?
Yeah, so by somebody who. Well, hold on.
Nobody wrote about it, so apparently
it was
somebody wrote about it.
Hold on. It was written about after the fact, but we have no other corroborating records. We have nothing to state this, right?
Well, we have no corroborating records that Washington crossed the Delaware outside.
Yeah, we do. We have writings from his soldiers that were with him who wrote to their families and talked about it. We have the orders. We have the orders. Hold on. We have the orders of him being told to do that. Like we have evidence of this, right? But this we have no evidence of. In fact, if you're just going to take it because this was written here, do you believe that Muhammad cut the moon in half?
I don't believe anything about Muhammad.
Oh, but it says it was written down, and he's not even the one who wrote it down, but it was written down that Muhammad, in order to get people to believe, cut the moon in half. So why don't you believe that?
Well, number one, the moon isn't cut in half. Number two, the entire book, the entire Quran was written 600 plus years after Jesus Christ, number one. Number two, in scripture, it tells us if any man or angel tells you these things, they are not true. Now,
hold on. Do you know? Hold on. Do you know?
Supposedly came to Muhammad and gave him the book of the Quran and said that it was God's word. But in scripture, it tells us if any angel tells you of God's word, it is a lie. If any man tells you what God is doing, it is a lie.
Yeah, do you know what the Muslim, what Muhammad's justification? Hold on. Listen. Do you know what Muhammad's justification for this was?
What?
They believe that the Christians had changed their scripture, and we have evidence of this. Did you know we have evidence that the scriptures have been added to?
How could we change the Muslim scriptures?
No. The Christian scriptures. The Christian scriptures have been changed.
Oh, the Council of Nicaea. They are books that they omitted and books that they let in, books that they did not let in.
Hold on,
Gilgamesh
scriptures
thing, yada yada yada.
Hold on,
so
scriptures.
Forth.
Well, you don't know what the Epic of Gilgamesh is, because Epic of Gilgamesh has nothing to do with the Council of Nicaea. Do you know what the Epic of Gilgamesh is?
Because it wasn't allowed in by the Council of Nicaea. Because the Epic of Gilgamesh does not fit what Scripture is narrating.
Hold on, what religion?
And that's why it was taken out.
What religion? What culture did the Epic of Gilgamesh belong to?
I'm assuming it was, because I'm not a biblical scholar.
It was Mesopotamian
Unlike
scripture.
You,
It belonged to
great one
Mesopotamia, my dude. It belonged to Mesopotamia. Yeah. So,
well, they were
but what I'm talking about,
they killed their own babies. Mesopotamians, they killed and ate their own babies, so we're not even worried about them.
Yeah,
they sacrificed their children.
Yeah, and Christian priests raped theirs, so we got that. But what we have going on here in Mark 16, if you didn't know, Mark 16 ends on verse 8. And it says,
I thought it ended on verse 2.
Well, hold on, the original ending, but guess what? They added to it. It got added to. There's an extended ending that got added after 400. So after 400, they added verses 9 through 20. This is added after 400. If we go and we look at John, the story of the adulterous woman, says like he who has no sin cast the first stone. That was also added after 400. They're not found in the original manuscripts, right? So I would say that Muhammad, who again, the religion was started after these changes were done, and Muhammad, an angel came to Muhammad and said, "Hey, look at how the Christians have manipulated these scriptures. These scriptures cannot be trusted anymore. So we're sending one."
Why did not Allah himself come down and tell him? Because it's a lie.
Oh, you don't know that?
Yeah, I do.
Do you not think that God is capable of sending an angel to reveal things to Muhammad?
Not when it comes to his word, no. Not when it comes to his laws, no. Because God has always spoken his own laws. He spoke his laws to Moses, and Moses gave the law, but he did not send an angel to Moses. He did not send any prophet to Moses. He spoke to Moses directly, his own words, not coming from an angel.
Oh, we've got all sorts of angels and prophets, God speaking through prophets to people throughout the whole entirety of the prophets.
In fact, every instituted by God.
Hold on, listen.
You're trying to change your narrative, and it's not working.
I'm not changing my narrative. My narrative hasn't been that he just came to change the law. You're trying to project that into it. I never said that. But every single messianic prophecy that you believe in didn't come from God. It came from a man. It came from a prophet coming and saying, "Hey, this is what God told me to tell you." So no, the majority of the scriptures come from a prophet.
That word came from God to that man, not from
you don't know that. You don't know that. You don't know that. We have instances where it's an angel speaking to the prophet, where an angel appears to the prophet and says, "The Lord told me to tell you this."
I just don't understand it.
I don't understand how you can be so dense either. And you look at, you can't even look at your own scripture.
See, there you go. And the minute I want to get aggravated or irate, the first thing you guys want to go
to
is,
I'm preventing you from getting, I'm preventing you. I didn't say anything about Christian love. I'm preventing you from showing that Christian love is what I'm doing. I'm preventing you from showing that Christian love. That's what I'm doing.
No, what you're
None
doing
of us
is
are following a Christian faith, so I don't know what the argument is.
exactly, you aren't following the Christian faith. But anybody that is following the Christian faith, you seem to enjoy, in fact, are elated about how you guys want to make fun of what we believe in. And the minute we get
It's
angry,
goofy. It's fucking goofy.
but the minute we get angry about it, that's the first thing you guys want to go to. See, there's that Christian love. See, you guys want to
It's not.
have your
It's not
cake
just
and
about
eat your ice
anger.
cream too. You
It's
guys can
not
have
just
your
about.
emotions and
Yeah, but
act
it's
on
not
your
just
emotions,
about
but we
anger.
can't.
It's not just about
That's
anger.
no. That's exactly
hold on,
what
hold
it
on.
is.
Listen
It's
to
not.
listen to Emily.
It's not. It's not just about anger. It's about using this to promote hate. What you do is you take things from the
Oh, you're not
Bible
promoting
and then
hate.
it is weaponized. Hold on. And it is weaponized against people in a very hateful way. That's why we say Christian love or in a mocking way. It's not because you get angry or frustrated.
No, it's not. Now
Right?
tell the truth.
It is. I mean, I
No,
don't
that
know
is
if you were
why.
here. Yeah,
No,
I
that
don't
is
know.
not
I
why.
don't know, Chrisman. I don't know if you were here when the last guest was up, but he quite literally was epitome of what I'm talking about. And a lot of people will read the Bible, see things literally, and we know that the Bible has a lot of violent things, a lot of misogynistic things, a lot of homophobic things, right? That a lot of people will use as justification to be hateful towards demographics of individuals. And this is problematic. This is what we have an issue, right? If you're going to look at the Bible and say, it's a sin to be gay, and then use that to then justify being hateful against a group of gay people, well, now that's where we have a problem because you're using your religion in a malicious way. That is why we use a verse, Christian love, because it's not. It doesn't abide by that if you want to claim that the God is supposed to be benevolent. It doesn't follow logically if you want to say, but love thy neighbor, which is also a verse in the Bible. Well, how are you loving your neighbor if you're just going to be bigoted towards a demographic? That's a contradiction. The Bible
Well,
has
let me
many
ask you
of
this
them.
about contradictions then, okay? You say that you love everybody, right?
I don't
Regardless.
say that.
Yeah, we don't
Well,
say
no,
that. I don't love everybody.
Yeah,
Do you
I don't
love your
make that
kids?
claim.
No, do you
You
love
make
your
that
kids?
claim in the Bible, according to God,
Well,
by
I'm
saying love thy
asking
neighbor,
you.
but that's not me.
I'm asking you.
Well, I
I'm not
don't.
making a claim. I am asking you. Do you love your kids?
I don't have any
Yes.
kids, but I would.
Okay, you love host. You love your kids, right?
Yep.
Do you love absolutely everything they do?
No.
But you're
I don't
supposed
know
to
what this
love
has.
them unconditionally.
I do love them unconditionally. I don't love what they
But you
do.
don't love everything
Hold
they
on, hold on,
do.
hold on. Yeah, when they do, I don't have to love what they do, but I love them.
Now, that is the narrative that you guys are telling us that we can't do. We do have love for the homosexual LGBTQ
Hold
community.
on. But see, the
all of that.
difference is, hold on. The
No,
difference
no.
is,
You're not going to run
Let me
me over
finish.
on this. No.
Oh
Let
yeah,
me
we'll
finish
just go ahead and give you a mute, right? So it is the case
me,
that
not letting me make my point.
yeah. So it is the case that when it comes to the
Don't keep muting
LGBTQIA
me
plus
because
community,
you know I'm right.
no, you're not. If it comes to
No,
to things, hold on, listen.
I can hate
if it
what
comes
they
to
do. I can hate what they do and still love them. I don't
But
have
you
to
don't,
condone
though.
what they do to love them.
Well,
So let
I'm
me ask
sorry.
you-
I'm sorry. What is it that they do?
yeah.
It tells
Just
us in
explain to
scripture.
me. What is
I am
it that
going
they
to
do
explain
that
it
is
to
so
you what they do.
problematic?
If you quiet down, I can tell you what they do in scripture tells us it is an abomination for a same-sex person to lie with a same-sex person. It is an abomination unto me. It is wrong. So we do not like that, and we call them out on that. And you guys sit there and say, because we are calling them out on what they are doing, we are hating them.
But why is it an abomination?
Because it is said it is an abomination in Scripture.
Yeah, but why?
Can a man? No.
But
Can
why,
a man
though?
give another? No.
No,
Can
no,
a
no,
man
but
sleep with
why-
another
why-
man and give
why
him a
is
child?
Why is it an abomination?
Can a man
Didn't
lie
didn't
in
God
bed?
create
hold on,
man in
hold
his
on.
image?
Answer
Didn't
the
Are you
God
going to
create?
let me
question.
finish?
Didn't
Well, you
God
gotta
create
listen to
man
her
in his
question.
image?
God.
Yeah.
I'm
Didn't
trying to, but she keeps talking
one
over
second.
me.
1 second. Didn't God make man in his own image?
Yes, he did. Now, can I answer your
Right?
question, please?
Isn't he supposed to
Hold
love
on.
everyone
Oh,
equally?
Jesus. No, I'm just going to keep talking because you
Isn't
keep
hold
asking
on 1
questions and I
second.
never get to answer a question.
Answer the question.
You're not
Isn't God
answering.
Yeah, isn't God supposed to love everyone equally? I mean, being that he's benevolent, right? So, I mean, I'm going to break this down in the argument since you can't seem to follow what I'm presenting here, right? The point is that when we're talking about gay people, we're talking about something that is who they are, right? So God would love gay people because that's just who they are. The act that you're referring to, right? If it is the case that you're going to claim that in the Bible it's talking about lying with another man to be, an abomination, which, I mean, many scholars are going to pick that apart and actually determine that that might not actually be the case. But for argument's sake, say that that is what it is saying, right? You're talking about intercourse, really, right? Is the act that you were talking about. And why is it only an issue as it pertains to GAY people? Because if it's just the intercourse that's an issue, surely that should also apply to heterosexual couples as well. Because it's about having intercourse, not about who they are, right? So then why do you only apply that to GAY people, right? God loves everyone, that includes gay people, right? But you like to misinterpret the Bible to suit some type of narrative that just doesn't make any sense.
Can I speak now without being interrupted, please?
Yeah,
If
go
you're
ahead.
gonna respond to the point.
Yeah,
I'd
respond to
love
Emily.
to. Pick one that you want me to respond to. Because you
Emily.
gave me 15 different points.
Anything that I've said.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to start from the very beginning of your point. In Scripture, in Timothy, it tells us, man shall not lie with another man. Can a man lie with another man or a woman lie with another woman and cause that person they lie with to become pregnant? No, they cannot.
Well, let me respond to that real quick.
Therefore,
Hold on.
okay, holding
Hold
on
on.
again.
You made a point. Let me respond to it. You made a point. Let me respond to it. Do you believe that we are morally obligated to have children? Are we obligated to have children? Go ahead.
I believe when God tells us to go forth and multiply, yes, and you could have one child and be happy with that. You could have 15 children and
Okay,
be happy with that.
my next case then, my next question then is, so if the purpose of it is just procreation, does that mean that once a woman hits menopause, or once it's a case that a man is deemed to be or a woman are deemed infertile, incapable of having kids, do you then state that they should live celibate lives?
No. Now,
Because there's no children coming after that. Hold on, there's no children coming after that.
you Neil. Oh, Marty, you people drive me batshit crazy.
Look at this
I
Christian
can't
love.
even talk without being interrupted.
I didn't interrupt
And
you.
you
I
guys
asked you a
sit here and
question.
say that I'm wrong for getting upset.
Yeah, so I muted you again. I don't need the meta. I just want an answer to the question. Are you
I
suggesting
can't
that
answer a
people
question
that
because
are...
every time I go to answer it, you shut me down.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and mute you again. We'll put that baby bottle. Let's put pacifiers in chat. Pacifiers in chat right now, or baby bottles. So the question is, right, if a man or woman is incapable of having children...
I answered that already.
Yeah, so no, you didn't. So what's the answer again? In
Yeah,
case I missed it.
said no.
Oh, they
I
shouldn't
said
be
no.
having... They shouldn't be having sex then.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that a person in their menopausal state or are deemed not healthy enough because things would go wrong or whatever prevents.
Oh, that's not the question I asked. That's not the question I asked. The question I said, because it doesn't lead to children because they're either infertile or they've gone beyond the age of being able to bear children.
They should not be celibate. Does that answer your question? Let me say it slow so you can wrap your...
I heard you. I heard you the first time.
Right.
So go ahead, Emily.
I was just gonna say, sorry, but does the Bible actually make a clear distinction that lie actually is referring to intercourse? So
So
like,
what
I was just gonna clarify this. So when they say like a man lies with man, is that that lie word? Are they trying to make the state to determine that that actually is like engaging in intercourse?
So the Hebrew word there is mishkaveh. And what mishkaveh, the first time we see mishkaveh being used in Hebrew is when Reuben is sleeping with his mother, is the first time we see it being used. And so if it is the case that in the Old Testament, when it comes to the Torah, if Moses did actually write it, if they believe that, then because we have other words in Hebrew to mean to lie with, and the only other time we see mishkaveh being used is when it comes to incest and also the homosexual stuff that's perceived to be homosexuality. And so this is where we get the idea that it's possibly referring to incestuous sex is probably what a lot of people are going with that. And it's also the case that when it says, it doesn't say a man shall not lie with a man. It actually states a man shall not lie with a man like he lies with a woman. We do know that women were viewed as property, that women were deemed and supposed to be submissive. And so many modern scholars, as we learn more about Hebrew, as we learn more about the Israelite culture, they are beginning to come to a realization that is probably not talking about like men actually being together. Like that's not what they're actually talking about. But it's the case that a man should never be in a submissive position. And so if you're in this submissive position and you're being lied with like you're a woman, that's what the issue is. It's not the smex itself. There's also literature of the time. We do have some Israelite poems and stuff that we found that are like extra biblical that kind of insinuate that homosexuality might have been okay. That they really didn't care too much of it, but it was the fact of being caught in that submissive position.
Or I guess, do you want to respond to what was said?
Oh, I can speak again. How wonderful. And to your secondary point, number one,
That was God who did that. God said, don't talk.
I'm Native American. So let's get your racist remarks right.
Wait. What does that have to do with race?
Because she said, I don't know why it's you white people that say this, this, and this. That's where the race came in.
Wait, who said that?
You
said that?
said it.
I'm
She
sorry.
said.
I'm sorry.
She
When,
said.
when,
You did. Yeah. You right there at the
when
bottom.
did I
underneath
say
me.
that? I
When you
never
were on
said
your
that.
rant.
What?
When you were on your rant and we were talking about the whole community, and you said, I don't know why you white people want to attribute it to the GAY side and it being this and it being that.
I
That's
never
exactly what you said.
made
Oh,
a
She
yes, you did.
never
Now you're
said
trying
that.
to backtrack and lie
I-
She
about what
never.
you said.
Oh, we'll go back and
I
listen to it.
Rewind
We'll
the
go
never
back
made a
and listen to it.
tape.
specification
Rewind
We'll go
the
back
tape
and-
and say that because I
Hold on,
know
we'll go
that
back and
you
listen
can
to it.
record it, and I know
Yeah.
it's there.
Yeah, I'm
I
streaming
know
on
it's
YouTube.
there,
Do you
and I
want
know
to?
it
Do you
can
want
be
to listen to
backplayed.
it? Do you want to listen to
Yep.
it? Do you want to listen to
Yep,
what she
the
said?
whole
I'll play it
thing.
back.
Yeah,
We'll go back
the
and get
whole
it.
thing.
Yeah, let me see. And where did she say this at?
I was sitting here trying to answer her first question, and I had made this statement about the LGBTQ and the gay community, this, that, and the other. And then she started talking over me, shut me down, and started saying, I don't see why you white people want to say it's just on this particular thing.
Yeah, we'll go. We'll go see if we can find this. Might take me a minute to get it found.
But anyway, to my point.
Hold on, listen.
You could have one child and be happy. You could have 15 children. Nope. Further back.
My next question
Hold on.
then is, so if the purpose of it is just procreation, so it's further back than that.
Oh, yes.
Hold on.
1 second. Didn't God make man in his own image?
Yes, he did. Now, can I answer your question, please?
Isn't he supposed to love everyone?
Jesus. I'm just going to keep talking.
Hold on 1 second.
Further back.
Hold on, let's see.
Isn't God? Yeah. isn't God supposed to love everyone? I mean, being that he's benevolent, right? So, I mean, I'm going to break this down in the argument since you can't seem to follow what I'm presenting here, right? The point is that when we're talking about gay people, we're talking about something that is who they are, right? So God would love gay people because that's just who they are. The act that you're referring to, right? If it is the case that you're going to claim that in the Bible it's talking about lying with another man to be, an abomination, which, I mean, many scholars are going to pick that apart and actually determine that that might not actually be the case. But for argument's sake, say that that is what it's saying, right? You're talking about intercourse, really, right? Is the act that you were talking about. And why is it only an issue as it pertains to GAY people? Because if it's just the intercourse that's an issue, surely that should also apply to heterosexual couples as well, because it's about having intercourse, not about who they are, right? So then why do you only apply that to GAY people, right? God loves everyone, that includes gay people, right? But you like to misinterpret the Bible to suit some type of narrative that just doesn't make any sense.
Can I speak now without being interrupted, please?
So
Further
are
back than that.
you mistaken when she spelled GAY as she said white?
No, it's further back than that.
Oh, okay. We'll go further back than that. How much further back do you want to go?
Can't.
Here we go.
It's not just about anger.
No. That's exactly
Hold
what
on.
it is.
Listen
It's
to
not.
listen to Emily.
It's not just about anger. It's about using this to promote hate. What you do is you take things from the Bible,
You're not promoting
and then
hate.
it is weaponized. Hold on, and it is weaponized against people in a very hateful way. That's why we say Christian love or in a mocking way. It's not because you get angry or frustrated.
No, it's not.
Right?
Now tell the truth.
It is. I mean, I
No,
don't
that
know
is
if you
why.
were here.
No,
Yeah, I
that
don't
is
know.
not why.
I don't know, Prisman. I don't know if you were here when the last kiss was up, but he quite literally was epitome of what I'm talking about. And a lot of people will read the Bible, see things literally, and we know that the Bible has a lot of violent things, a lot of misogynistic things, a lot of homophobic things, right? That a lot of people will use as justification to be hateful towards demographics of individuals. And this is problematic. This is what we have an issue, right? If you're going to look at the Bible and say, it's a sin to be gay, and then use that to then justify being hateful against a group of gay people, well, now that's where we have a problem, because you're using your religion in a malicious way. That is why we use the verse, Christian love, because it's not. It doesn't abide by that if you want to claim that the God is supposed to be benevolent. It doesn't follow logically if you want to say, but love thy neighbor, which is also a verse in the Bible. Well, how are you loving your neighbor if you're just going to be bigoted towards a demographic? That's a contradiction. The Bible has
Let me
many
ask you
of
this
them.
about contradictions then, okay?
So was that where she didn't call you white? Is that the spot?
That's what I'm saying is I'm not white. I am Native American.
Hold on. That's
never,
not what you said.
I never said you were white, though. What?
Yeah,
I'm so
you made a
lost.
serious accusation of something that never
and
occurred.
If I did not believe that accusation was valid, I wouldn't even have told you to go back up, would I?
So where did that accusation come in?
I don't remember exactly. I don't remember because I haven't got minutes on here, but I know it was said. You guys can deny it.
Well, we
all
just
you
played
want,
it.
But I
We just played
guarantee you,
it.
if you go back to where I first came in here and I started talking, it was all fine, well, and good.
So hold on.
Good.
So this is my friend.
I don't care who your friend is.
Two Spirit. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Two Spirit. I'm from the Haudenosaunee Mohawk. I'm Wolf Clan. Since Crimson wants to claim Indigenous, hey, who are you from?
I'm
Who are your
Cherokee,
people?
North
Cherokee
Carolina.
what?
Cherokee
what?
North Carolina Turtle Clan.
No, Cherokee, North Carolina. Cherokee what? Cherokee Nation. What? Which part of the Cherokee?
I just told you, Turtle Clan.
No, that's not answering my question. But which part of the Cherokee? So, which Cherokee band are you from? Are you from Cherokee Nation? Like, I'm not going to give you all of them because I have a feeling if I give you all of them, you'll end up just being like, oh, yeah, that one. So, like, which one are you from? I'm giving you one.
North Carolina, reservation. I do not live on the reservation. I am on the rolls in North Carolina.
You're not
on the
answering my question. Again,
I am
it
on
seems
the
like you're having
out
a
of North
problem
Carolina,
hearing what I'm asking.
Cherokee. If you want to get technical, it would be Eastern Band.
Thank you. Look, that was so hard to pull straws on that one. Okay, so you're Eastern Band. All right, now answer me this real quick. Can you tell me what MMIW stands for?
No, because I don't know everything about our heritage like I should.
Okay, so you don't know what MMIW
appalled
is.
about it, but
So-
that's not you going to sit here and tell me that I'm
That's
not.
not a problem.
Because if
That's
you
not a
do,
problem. Hey,
I will find you.
Hey, you're gonna find me. That's cute. So, with that being said, I love the little threats. It's not gonna bother me.
It's not a threat. That's
like
a promise.
you can sit here,
'Cause I don't
throw your
make it-
little
I don't
threats
do
around,
idols.
but like that's okay. Hey, so you couldn't answer what MMIW is, which you should know that that's currently going on. That's not just in the past. It's currently going on, but that's okay. Can you tell me what the definition of land back is?
Yeah, I know exactly what it is because we're still fighting for that.
Yeah,
We've
can you
been
tell me what it
fighting for
means?
land back since they broke the first freaking treaty.
Yeah. So can you tell me what that means, though? I
Yeah,
understand
we want
what
back
you're saying.
what was taken from us wrongly.
Yeah, no, I mean, can you
Right
tell me
along
what
with
the
the water
actual
rights.
like
Right along with
manifesto
the-
is?
When right along with the women and children that are taken from us. We want recognition.
so-
we want giving
yeah.
back what is taken.
Yeah,
That's what
it's
it
cute.
is.
It's cute you said that. The women and children taken from us, but yet you couldn't tell me what MMIW stands for, since that's actually the movement that covers the women and children that are taken from us, not land back. But that's okay. You know, hey, each our own. I just wanted to think you know what land back means. So can you tell me how the process of land back is written out in every land back manifesto, please?
No, I cannot. But there again,
Oh, okay.
you are calling into my what's the word?
Did I
here?
ever? Hold on. Did
you-
I ever
you're
once
sitting here
say that
trying
you're
to
not?
say that I am not.
No, I've
By
never
asking
want.
me
No,
all
the
of these
words.
questions and saying, "Well, you don't know
words,
that. You don't know that.
me
You don't
saying,
know that."
Hey, Crimson.
I'm taking
just real
offense
quick.
to it.
Crimson. You might be taking offense to it, and that's cute. I mean, you can go smudge a little bit. Maybe that'll help you out. But I'm gonna be honest with you. Like right now, I'm just asking you simple questions, and for
Yeah,
some
well, I'm
reason,
gonna ask you a simple
it's
question.
irritating.
Tell me
Okay, go
what
ahead.
the purpose of the eagle feather is.
Your people's purpose or my people's purpose?
You seem to know everything about Cherokee.
No, I said your people's purpose or my
Yeah.
people's purpose. You're not being
Mine.
specific.
Mine.
Your people's purpose. Okay, so your people's purpose of the Cherokee feather is to represent when you do
not
actual
the Cherokee
deeds.
feather, the eagle feather.
The eagle feather. You said for the Cherokee, correct?
Yeah, but it's not the Cherokee
Okay,
feather.
yeah, no, I know it's not the Cherokee feather. I said for the Cherokee, the eagle feather. Okay, I think we might need to clean our ears out a little bit, but that's okay. So for the eagle feather for the Cherokee is earned by doing what you do for your people. The more you have are the more deeds that you have done for your people, not for yourself, but for your people. Would you like me to get more specific and go into the ceremonies that are involved into it? Because I can do that too.
Oh, please.
I can
and
also
while
go
you're
ahead
at
and
it-
get into the actual.
and while you're
Here's
at
the
it,
thing about. Here's
why
the
don't
funny
you
thing.
tell me-
I can
why don't you
actually
tell
tell
me
you
who
your
has the
people's
real power in the
creation
clans?
story. I can also tell you who did your creation story. And on top of that, here's another fun fact for you. I can even tell you the Cherokee migration story before the Cherokee became the Cherokee, because if you would know, and this is where I'm assuming you don't know, see, the Cherokee branched off of the Haudenosaunee specifically, if you would like. And on top of that, I can actually have another person that's Cherokee that can come up here and go over this too, if you would like, being that Kenzie's in here. And I know for 100% fact that Kenzie is Cherokee. Now, if you would like me to have a person that's Cherokee, if that makes you more comfortable, I can switch out for that person. But the reason I'm asking you these simple questions is because you said you had no idea what these old terms of MMIW is. Your definition of land back does not even cover what land back actually means. You just said, it just means we want our land back and water rights. That is unfortunately not actually what land back means. So here's the thing I want you to do. You yourself need to continue to deconstruct before you can go around saying I'm such a proud indigenous person. Because here's the problem,
And
my
you
friend.
need to kiss
You
my left toe
constantly
because you know
listen
nothing about my
again.
life
You
or
don't
what my
know
family has been
anything.
through to even prove
Hey,
what we
hey,
are.
hey,
Hey,
hey.
nothing.
You
Hey, nothing.
constantly are
You are
giving into your
disrespecting me
emotions.
and my entire
You're giving
family. And
into
yes,
your
I am getting
emotions.
uptight and I am getting in my emotions
Yes, you're
because I
not
have that
even
right.
walking
And
the
you
path
cannot
of an
take that away
indigenous
from me.
person. Hey, you
Hey,
need to
what?
stop with the colonizer talk.
No,
You
you
need to take a
stop
nice
what you're
little
trying
smudge.
to tell me and
Hey,
how I'm not doing what I need to do
you
when
need
I
to
have spent
smudge a little bit,
50
buddy.
years
Hey,
trying to
hey,
even prove what
yeah?
I am.
Okay,
50
so
years
if
I
you've
have
had to
fought.
spend 50 years,
50
this
years
is
I have
telling me
fought to
that
prove
you
it. And you
yourself
have no
didn't have
call
the
to even sit here and
evidence.
fix your mouth, you white
Hey.
Anglo-Saxon piece of trash.
Oh, yeah? Do you even know who the Haudenosaunee are? No, they would be your ancestors' ancestors. Because
Well, to
again,
me,
like I
you're
was trying to
white.
inform you,
To me, you're
yeah, that's
white.
cute. You can call me white all you like.
You
It
are a
doesn't change
colonizer,
anything.
a sympathizing
I'm a
colonizer
colonizer.
that wants
Hey,
to downplay anybody that even
hey.
thinks or can
You're
prove that they
literally,
are
hey,
native, and you want to
hey,
belittle it
buddy,
and beguile it and
buddy.
degrade them
Here's the
because you
funny
are
thing.
not
I
true
actually
to what your
live
heritage
on the
speaks of.
reservation. Hey, I actually live on the reservation. I was born
Then
on
you
the
need to be able
reservation.
to
And
sympathize
you
with my plight
yourself,
instead of sitting
I
here trying to tell me
don't
what
need
I
to
am and am not.
sympathize with anything. Here's the funniest thing. You're
The funniest
literally
thing is
being
you
a
think you know me and you know
colonizer.
nothing about me. That's
No,
the funny thing.
the funniest thing here is,
Shut
buddy,
up, white
is
boy.
that you literally are defending the religion that unalived hundreds of millions of our people, and you think for some reason you're gonna call me the colonizer when you're literally supporting the religion that unalived hundreds of millions of indigenous people, did forced assimilation, and literally unalived women and children at some of the highest rates throughout history, but yet I'm the colonizer? Like, that's just funny, buddy.
That was wild.
Did he leave or get dropped?
He left. Well, I didn't drop
So
him.
welcome to what is known as Crimson's belligerent ranting. They've done that once before in other indigenous lives.
That's wild. I mean, I kind of sensed it when he claimed that I called him white when I didn't.
I'll use
You
TikTok
did not.
for.
You
I'll
did
use the
not say
TikTok.
that word. I was sitting here listening since he came up on the. I was been listening for like guest past. But with that being said, you've never said that word one time, and he inserted it, and then he tried to pull some kind of trump card by saying, "I'm not YT. I'm indigenous." But like, he does pick Cherokee, which I'm like, all right, red flag number one. Whee, Cherokee. And even Kenzie knows why. If the first thing that comes out of their mouth when they're acting like that is Cherokee, it's an instant red flag. Because it's like, okay, we already know where this is going to go. Because Kenzie will tell you, they always say Cherokee.
Well,
Wait,
that's the
were
problem.
you here since the like misogynistic guest? Because you said you were here
Yes,
like
I've been listening. I've literally been playing a video game and listening. I always listen in on Cyber's live. It was just the minute that the person said indigenous, and I was like, ooh, I am here, Cyber, if you need me. But I am actually going to drop back down so you can get more guests. But I just wanted to help you out with that situation because, like, I'm always listening.
Yeah,
awesome.
and real quick, if you haven't already, give both Kenzie and Two Spirit. And if you see chicken strips in chat, give the three of them follows. I don't know Kenzie too well. I've been in a few lives with them in the chat. I haven't been on panel very many times, but I've listened. Oh, go ahead.
I said I was going to give you a little bit of introduction.
Yeah, go ahead.
33, she, her, Jalagi, Ale, Chatahasia.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I put it this way, I am a status member within the Oklahoma Band of the Cherokee, which is, in a way, what's funny is historical fact. Some of the ones in the Eastern Band Some of them got removed from the role when they moved to North Carolina because they bent the
Oh.
knee because of forced assimilation. Because they decided to take the incentive that Andrew Jackson put out of, hey, we're going to give you X amount for your property. We'll allow you to stay here. Otherwise, you can walk down the Trail of Tears.
Yeah, that's
And for some families fled and hid and then made their way to Oklahoma.
makes sense. Yeah, it's interesting too, because being Jewish, we get a lot of, when it comes to the Hebrew Israelites, that's what a lot of them will say is they're descendant from the Cherokee. They believe that the Cherokee, that they were the original Cherokees. That
We're talking about the extremist band of the okay. Okay.
So, but
All right,
anyways,
Saber, I'm gonna drop back down.
Yep, I appreciate both of you coming up. I'm going to go ahead and drop you down, but both of you are welcome on my panel anytime. But yeah, that was wild though. I
I
don't know.
mean, that was a crash out. I mean, I would say that was more embarrassing than Jordan Peterson.
Oh man, I don't think it can be any more embarrassing than popping up on a debate that's supposed to be Christian versus atheist, and then the first thing you say is, I'm not a Christian, or I never said I was a Christian, so they legit have to change the name of the YouTube title so
I mean,
that
Jordan really got a beating. I mean, I thought Parker, Danny, and Ian both kind of cooked. I was literally tempted to do a YouTube video being like the epic takedown of Jordan Peterson and do it in like a boxing ring, be like, round one.
one.
And then Parker comes in, and then it's like, round two, round three, knockout.
Danny has to be the round 3.
Yeah, you know what? That's actually right. I'll have to switch Ian around round two, round one, round two, and then Danny just been like, knockout. That would be fucking funny to do.
All right. So right now I am only accepting opposition. So hey, Christianity is false. If you believe Christianity is true, hop in the box. We'd love to chat with you. I want to hear your strongest argument for why Christianity is true. Hop on up. That could be historical. We could look at prophecies. We could look at all sorts of things. I'd love to hear it. Love to talk with you about it. If we got anybody over on Video Ninja. I do have somebody over on Video Ninja if you want to hop over there, Emily.
Oh, Video Ninja. Yeah, I have to get that. What's the link again?
It's up in the link right here. It's tinyurl.com/cd-guest.
All right.
All right. Gonna get this muted. We're gonna go over to Video Ninja. We're gonna bring a guest from over there. How you doing, Tolvier?
Oh, hi. How's it going? I'm doing pretty all right.
It's going. And let me make sure we can hear you over.
Sure.
Okay, they should be able to hear you. And over on TikTok, can you hear the guest?
Hello.
And can I get your age real quick?
27.
Ryan, are you a Christian?
I am.
What's your strongest argument that Christianity is true?
Well, I would say the historical argument is probably the best one that's objective. Most people don't take personal testimony, although I would suggest that can be a good one. But I would typically just say the historical argument for the death and resurrection.
All right, let me get Emily brought in as well. So this is Emily. Emily is my co-host.
Howdy.
And Emily, can you say something real quick? I want to make sure I got you in as well.
Hello?
Just waiting here to see if I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Her.
All right. So, what historically, do you find convincing? Can you give me a piece of historical evidence?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that you have the Gospels, you have the writings of the disciples of the apostles, the writings of the apostles themselves. You have the mass conversions. I don't, I'm not convinced that there, or I haven't been presented with any naturalistic explanation for what could have happened. I mean, I've heard things like mass hallucination, but I don't really see how that would work. It doesn't. It's. I don't find. I haven't found that convincing. If that
So do you know when the Gospels are first mentioned, like ever in history,
first mentioned as in like
by like any church fathers?
uh no, I'm not. I wouldn't know when they're first mentioned. I just know the general dating.
So yeah, the first time they are ever used in around 155 by Justin Martyr. He refers to them as the memoirs of the apostles, but it's in 155. But the issue with this is that Justin Martyr and a lot of the church fathers before Justin Martyr were still trying to argue circumcision, right? They're arguing circumcision. But if it is the case that the letters of Paul, which should have settled this, the letters of Paul should have had this settled. If they had already been around, why are and circulating and it was known, why are the church fathers during this time still fighting about circumcision, whether they should do it or not?
I mean, I don't know too terribly much about like second century circumcision laws. I mean, I know that they would have had, they wouldn't have had the transmission of ideas nearly as prominently. So I mean, I'm not too familiar. I don't want to like overstep my bounds on this, but I would assume that it's just because during this time of Christianity was not allowed to publicly declare stuff. I imagine that would cause some communication errors and issues. We know that the churches that like Paul talks about how he would go and he would preach for them and he would explain these things and then they would go away and change, or they would stop believing, or they would do something in error. And Paul, that's why we get the writings of Paul. So I would say that there's any number of reasons of people being people, communication not being um, widely as open or available, that sort of thing.
Well, but the church fathers this should have been settled, though. Like they're literally arguing, right? So a few issues that we have is if it's settled, if it's supposed to be settled, in the second century, and you're right, these are second century problems. But we have issues where like we've got are you familiar with who Marcion is?
No.
All right, so Marcion was a church father who was deemed a heretic because he didn't and I'm not really going to go like too deep into Marcion, but Marcion like had this belief that Yahweh was like this evil god, and that there was another deity essentially named God the Father. It's kind of how he referenced him, just God the Father, and this God the Father wanted to save us from Yahweh. So God the Father sent Jesus down essentially to save us. But Jesus came down as like a full adult. It's one of the you probably heard about like the issue with Capernaum where Jesus has never been there before. It's like his first time going there, and he makes a claim like you guys are going to ask me to perform miracles like you saw me do before. It's like a thing that's mentioned in Luke. But that comes from Marcion. Marcion is also he's writing in the 130s. He has another book, so his gospel is called oh crap, my forgetting the name of his gospel, right? Evangeline. Evangeline is his gospel, and then he has another book that he writes called the Apostolicon. Make sure you hit all those syllables. If you don't, you're going to raise an army of darkness. But he has a thing called the Apostolicon, which are a group of letters from Paul, right? So we only learn about Paul from Marcion. In fact, Tertullian mentions that he wouldn't believe in Paul either. However, he had his own edits of the Pauline letters, so that's how he knows that Paul is real. But if it wasn't for him having his own personal collection of Paul's letters, his own edits, he wouldn't have even taken Paul. He wouldn't have believed in Paul. We have this. So we have in the second century, we have Marcion, we have Gnosticism, we have Arian Christianity. Arian Christianity, for chat, is not to be confused with like Schnazis. It was a man, it was a priest named Arian. And so they had this, we had a bunch of these different branches, but this is because the Gospels are not a thing yet. There's no Gospels, there's no letters of Paul. These aren't out yet. They're not in circulation. Nobody knows about them. And so we have these early Christians that are just kind of going off and doing their own thing, which led to the Nicene Council, the first Nicene Council. And the whole purpose of it was one to by this time, by 325, Gnosticism has kind of been stomped out. The early churches deemed most of those people as heretics. They've kind of stomped it out a little bit. But the Arian Christianity was grabbing firm. And so they had to hold a whole council to settle down and say, hey, Jesus is divine. And they took a vote on it. But my point in this is that these gospels, these historical texts, just weren't in circulation, right? They're not first century. They're not written by the people who said they did. They don't get their names till the 180s. The 180s is when they first get named: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So they're not like firsthand accounts. So to me, it seems to be a group of people calling themselves Christians trying to write works that appear to be in the past, but they're actually written in the future. They're written current time to appear to have been over 100 years ago.
Okay, so that was a lot. I'm gonna try and get to it all if I can. So it was Marcion.
So keynotes, I'll just give you a breakdown.
Sure.
So it was Christianity going in different branches. It was early church fathers not being able to agree on early Christian laws. The example I used for that specifically was circumcision. The third one was that the Gospels themselves aren't mentioned until the mid 2nd century, but they're only mentioned like in passing. And again, they're but they don't get their names till the 180s.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I started writing it down a little after. So it's Gospels aren't mentioned. The church fathers disagreed.
On basic fundamental things, that
Okay.
Paul should have, or Paul or the Gospel should have settled.
Okay.
We've got different branches of Christianity that like don't have anything to do with any of the text.
Okay. So I'm not terribly familiar with the idea that the Gospels are 2nd century. I know that they weren't initially called like the initial writings would not have been, this is the gospel according to Mark, this is the gospel according to Matthew, right? They're given these names, they're attributed these names later on. I think I don't remember the church father that talks about the 4 of them. But I think I know what you're referring to when they get attributed. I'm familiar with that, but it's my understanding that most people agree that these would have been written in the 1st century, because I believe John is universally accepted as the latest, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And I believe he is. I believe that one is believed to have been in about 99 or 100, somewhere around there. So I would say that would suggest if he's the latest, then the others should be before him. For the church fathers' disagreement, I know they disagreed. I'm not super well versed in church history,
and that's fair.
But
that's
I know
fair.
This isn't. I know this isn't something that we would like really hold an issue with. That was kind of the purpose of the councils: come together, discuss these things, hash it out, make sure that we have this common understanding, this common agreement of what is going on.
But the issue, real quick, the issue with this though is like I could understand like if there's something the scriptures aren't exactly clear on, like for example, in Judaism, when it comes to Passover, the kosher laws change for Passover and some holidays. The laws actually, I gotta go do a puzzle piece. Stupid TikTok. I'm sorry, I love the TikTok shop. Don't hate TikTok. But
Yeah.
yes. So like during Passover, the laws change, like dietary laws change a little bit for us. And so like things like that maybe aren't, where they're like, okay, we're not following kosher laws anymore, but what about on holidays? What about then? Those are things that I could understand church fathers fighting about, because none of the letters of Paul are like explicit on how we handle these things, right?
Mm.
They don't say anything about it. But when it comes to things that Paul makes it clear, right? That John makes clear, that the Gospels make clear, right? That there is, John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then in verse 15, it makes it clear that the Word became flesh, making like, the Trinity, right? Being, it's the Trinity,
Right.
right? But they're still fighting over whether or not Jesus is divine, and they're fighting over this, right? Or when Paul says, hey, no circumcision, Paul makes it clear there's no circumcision, but if you do get circumcised, then hey, you have to follow the law, the old law. If you're circumcised, you're putting yourself under the old law, right? And so Paul makes these like very clear, and the Gospels make things clear. But the church fathers are arguing about these, and these would just show me that these doctrines just aren't present at the time, that they don't know these.
Okay. Okay. Um, I guess I don't know if this is exactly what you'd be looking for in this live, but for to really get into that, I'm not as familiar with these topics as that I could have like I could bring like points for you and be like, oh well, actually, Irenaeus says this or Polycarp said that. I know some of the names, but I'm not super. I couldn't tell you like what they write. Um, but I would say it would probably be most beneficial if we actually just went through some of that stuff, and we said like, okay, what are they actually disagreeing about? What are they talking about? And then like, where is it referenced in scripture? Um, and then that would probably be the most efficient way, because like I said, I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want to like frivolously argue over something that I don't know.
Oh, I mean, we could go look into these. I'm just bringing up that there are arguments, and you've already kind of conceded that there are the arguments on these. So I mean, if you want to go in and start looking at, like, it'd get really boring for chat if we're just over here
Yeah,
like
that's yeah, right. So
jumping in. Right. But
I,
what I'm saying though is these are my arguments for it, right? And then you mentioned the history with John being written probably in 99 and stuff like that. The issue that we run into as well, like with the dating of the Gospels, are you familiar with like Markan priority, or like the synoptics and why they're called the synoptics?
I'm not sure the familiar, but I know that there's typically the idea that, excuse me, people tend to lump Matthew, Mark, and Luke together.
Hmm.
They're earlier. I know John was essentially asked to write his in response, or I don't know if this is in a specific letter, but it's my understanding that John was essentially asked by other members of the church to write his gospel that is essentially in response to him, and so he comes away with this like distinct thing that, or this distinct style of writing, and the way he uses his language, and that's why you end up with this like distinction between the earlier three and then John's writing.
Yeah. So the synoptics are Matthew, Mark, and Luke.
Hmm.
And most people, most scholars are going to adhere to Mark in priority, because Mark is the shortest of them. And what we see when we look at Matthew and Mark, or sorry, when we look at Matthew and Luke, both Matthew and Luke take from Mark and they expound on it, right? So Mark might mention, because again, Mark, out of all the Gospels, Mark is the shortest. And when you read Mark, it'll mention something, and then when you go read Luke, when you're reading Luke, Luke almost expects you to have read Mark, because Luke expounds on it, right? Luke goes into more detail, and then so does Matthew, right? So when it comes down from Mark, and you can Google and you'll find a chart that'll kind of show this. There'll be a chart that'll show you like how much of Luke or how much of Mark is found in Luke, how much of Mark is found in Matthew. But then Matthew and Luke also share information that's not found in Mark, right? So it's not found in Mark, but they share information with each other. And then when you actually look at how much information is actually unique to just Luke or just to Matthew, it's a very small amount that is only unique to those books. Most of it because they all share. But the reason why we do Mark in priority is because we don't see any of these elements going from Matthew and John. We don't see any elements that they uniquely share going into Mark, right? If we saw that going into Mark, then we'd probably go into some other priority. But this is the reason why we buy into Mark in priority, is because if it was written first, obviously we're not going to see anything from Matthew and Luke. Mark couldn't use them as sources. But essentially, the Mark in priority states that because of this, both Luke and Matthew were using Mark. Mark was being used. Oftentimes, there's some scriptures that are quoted word for word. And so what modern scholars who look at this, what they'll say and how they'll kind of talk about it too is, imagine that there's an autobiography being written about your dad. However, I'm the one writing it, right? I'm writing it, but then when you write it, you look at my works, but you have access to your dad. You're Matthew. You have access to Jesus. You're able to talk to Jesus. Why are you coming to me to talk about your dad? So that's kind of the issue when we look at the synoptics, is why was Mark being written first, and why is Matthew leaning on Mark? It's just weird. It's goofy.
Yeah, so first I just have a clarifying question about when we
Mhm.
say leaning on, we are specifically talking about like the would we be talking about like examples of stories? Would we be talking about like word choice, or what is there specifics on like what that means?
Yeah, I'll share my screen with you. I think it'll
Sure.
be
Yeah, that's fine.
easier. Yeah, I'll
Wait,
share the screen here. I think it'll be easier. Go ahead, Emily.
I was going to say, before you continue, this might get a very thorough biblical conversation. So I'm just going to hop down, but I appreciate you letting me up.
Okay, not a problem, Emily. Let's give Emily some massive W's. All right, we're going to share this screen, and we're going to look. All right. And chat, unfortunately, chat, you're not going to be able to see this. Let me make sure we got it where, see what he can see right now.
Sorry, chat.
Yeah. All right. So if you look at this chart, let me see if I can
Okay.
bring this see if it'll let me. Did that make it bigger for you?
Yeah, I can see. Okay.
All right. So if you look here at Mark, so we have where oh, is this, make sure we got Mark in. Yeah, so there's only 3% of Mark that's unique to Mark, right? But then when we look at the purple, it has a triple tradition, right? So 76% of Mark is used in both, and you'll see how much of it is used in Luke and Matthew, right? And then you'll see that there's 18% of Mark that gets used in Mark and Matthew.
Okay.
And then when you look at Luke, right, Mark and Luke, there's a 1%, right? And then with Matthew, we have a double tradition. So this is the thing that shows us that Mark is first, is this double tradition, because we don't see this double tradition where Matthew and Luke are sharing information together, but these are not being used in Mark.
Okay.
And then
First, I just want.
35%.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead.
No, I was going to point out. Susan, I think, is typing in the chat. I don't think we can hear her.
Oh, no, she's
I
muted.
just.
She's muted right
Oh,
now.
okay. I just wanted to. I just seen her
Yep.
in the chat, and I wanted to make sure we're good.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, she's muted.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly don't deny that there's plenty of overlap. Obviously, there's plenty of overlap. I think it would be pretty natural to expect overlap, particularly with whoever's first. Also, if I'm not mistaken, Mark's source was Peter himself. So it wouldn't particularly surprise me that Luke and Matthew would be drawing from Peter. He's kind of given this very prominent role by Jesus. He is the foundation of the church. I don't see how this is much of an issue, or maybe
Do
I'm
you
just
know?
missing what the
Well,
point would be.
do you know where we? So this is one of the issues, right? Do you know where we get that Peter is giving information to Mark? Do you know who we get that from?
Not off the top of my head, no.
All right. So have you heard of Papias?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Papias is an extremely early church father, going from the early 2nd century to about the mid 2nd century. He supposedly, we don't have his writings. They don't survive. But he wrote, and this is one of the reasons why we believe, that scholars believe, Matthew and Mark specifically were picked to be gospel names. So Papias wrote that Mark at a later date started writing down stories that Peter had told him, because he was Peter's translator. And so he was writing down, later on in life, he started writing down stories that he remembered Peter telling him. And then with Mark, he states, Papias writes, that Matthew felt that Jesus had some pretty banging quotes that he stated. So he just started making a book that was just a list of quotes. Just a list of quotes that Jesus thought. He was doing like Jesus soup for the soul or something, something like that, like a chicken soup for the soul type thing. So that's how Papias explains it. But when he's explaining like Peter is just telling him his life story, not like anything particular to Jesus or any individual. He's like, Peter just told him amazing stories of his own life, and Mark started writing them down. The issue with this is, one, we don't have the surviving records of Papias saying these. We hear this from a church historian named Eusebius. And Eusebius is an admitted liar. He stated that he has no problem changing or altering information as long as it benefits and converts people to the church. And if there is anything that is harmful to the church, he's just not going to write it down at all, right? He's just going to ignore it. He's not going to write it down. And these are things that are extremely problematic. Now, Papias, we don't have his writings anymore. All we have are quotes from Eusebius, who is stating that, hey, this is what Papias said about Matthew and Mark, at least.
Yeah, I think I'm familiar with that at least a little bit.
Yep. But again, the issue with this too is that the way Eusebius states that Papias was talking about it doesn't line up with what the Gospels actually were. Matthew is not a list of quotes that Jesus said. It gives us a birth story. It gives us, a whole gospel of what Jesus did during his life. Gives us prophecies, stuff like this. So it doesn't fill in what Papias said it was. So this is why a lot of historians, when they take a look at this, they'll be like, well, yeah, Papias mentions Matthew and Mark, but what he said the Gospels were, if he even said it, doesn't line up with the actual gospels we have. So they don't believe he was like referring to the gospels.
Okay. Would you do you know the sorry, I don't mean to be the would you have a source? But could we look at that real quick, or do you have that by chance ready?
Where he said
The
Eusebius
yeah,
lies.
Papias, like well, no, like the
Oh,
reference to what Mark is, or what is in Mark, or how it's written.
yeah.
Because that would be because I think that would be the best place to start. And then I would say, depending on what is presented or what is said, then we can judge off of that, and then we can go from, okay, well, is he claiming that it is nothing more than these chicken soup for the soul, right? Just some quotes. And if it doesn't say that, then I would say, well, okay, you have this idea of or I would say the idea that it is just quotations is um, I would need some evidence for that.
Yeah. No. That's yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Um.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Like
Oh
I just
no. You're
I don't
good.
know
You're
how to.
good. Um.
Yeah, I know sources are like sources are hard. It's one of them things. It's like you never know what you're gonna get. You never know what you're gonna get
No.
asked to
You're good.
pull
You're
up. So
good.
cool.
Yeah, I'm just looking for it real quick.
Sure. Which who sorry, was it Eusebius or Papias that said this? I can maybe Google it myself
Yeah,
and try and help
Papias.
out. Papias, all right, Papias. Papias.
Yeah, say
I'll meet
what
with
did
Papias on
Papias say about the gospel or say about Matthew and Mark?
questions about evangelist Mark and Matthew, church fathers, fragments of Papias. Let's see, fragments of Papias. It's written by him. Um, sorry about this, chat. Didn't mean to like really kill the stream. It's my bad. You can blame me for it.
Yeah, so
it
we'll
was my
get
plan all
here.
along to make us go on this.
So here we go. So Papias said that Mark carefully recorded Peter's teachings, though not in a structured order, and that Mark did not have firsthand knowledge of Jesus, but heard from Peter. And he stated that Matthew originally wrote the sayings of the Lord Jesus in Hebrew. And this is where you get the idea that there's a Hebrew manuscript out there somewhere. But Matthew originally wrote the sayings of Jesus in Hebrew language, and others then translated them.
Okay, yeah. So I would just put forth that that doesn't necessarily mean that he's literally only stating like quotes. So I would just yeah. I mean that would pretty much be my argument.
Yeah, I think the issue though is like if we're going off of what Papias supposedly said, um, it's because again he's Matthew. We could agree on that if Matthew, because keep in mind I'm a mythicist. I don't believe that the apostles even existed. But let's
Oh,
say
okay.
they did. I'm stepping into your worldview. Let's say they did exist. If he's saying that he just wrote the sayings of Jesus in Hebrew, right? And that's what Papias said, and that's all we get from it. If that's what he said, then he wrote the sayings down. We don't, Jesus didn't go around preaching his birth story, you know. So we can only go off what he says. But could also be the case though that Irenaeus just made it up, and that there's people who believe that Papias may not have even existed. Papias is one of the church fathers whose existence is called into question because we don't have any contemporaries writing about him. There's a lot of things missing about a lot of the early church fathers. There's a lot of issues with them, things that are just missing. And so, like, even historians today say, Papias, we don't actually know if he actually existed or not.
Okay. Well, if I'm not trying to change the subject, I want to
Mhm.
address this, but I first want to maybe try and this is a question. My intent here is to try and get to the root. Um, would you be a mythicist towards the figure of Jesus, or is it specifically the apostles and the early fathers?
I am a mythicist towards I believe most of the church fathers existed. I'm not going to be mythicist towards
Sure.
them. I believe most of them existed. At least in the 2nd century. I'm a mythicist towards Jesus, Paul, and the apostles. And the reasoning for this is,
Okay.
again, as we talk about the gospels, some of the things we're talking about, when we look at the gospels, I believe they were written in the mid 2nd century. We don't have very many evidence. When we talk about like historians, or not historians, but scholars agreeing that they took place, like they were written like Mark, if Mark was the first gospel and it was written around 70, do you know why they believe that is?
I believe it has something to do with reference to the fall of the temple. I think it says
Yeah.
something to the effect.
Mhm.
Yeah. It references it as still being built,
Correct.
whereas it fell in 70. Yeah.
Correct. Now, if you were to talk to me, a few years ago, I'd be right there. But something that we see in a type of genre at the time, and we see this with the book of Daniel, is writing something that's present, but writing it as if it's in the past, right? So, for
Okay.
example, we see this in Daniel. So the book of Daniel is written as if it's taken place during the Babylonian exile. We get the whole story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Nebuchadnezzar. But we found this cylinder not too long ago called the Nabonidus cylinder. Now, the reason why the Nabonidus cylinder is so important is that we learned that there's this person named Belshazzar. Now, Belshazzar is mentioned in the book of Daniel as being the son of Nebuchadnezzar. And people believe that. But as we learned from the Nabonidus cylinder and some other Babylonian artifacts that we've found since, we have found that Belshazzar isn't related to Nebuchadnezzar at all. There's nobody in Nebuchadnezzar's lineage named Belshazzar. We have a person named Nabonidus, and Nabonidus, Belshazzar is the son of Nabonidus, and a lot of the deeds that are attributed to Nebuchadnezzar, they don't even believe Nebuchadnezzar did those anymore because of these artifacts. They're attributed to Nabonidus. Now, Nabonidus isn't even related to Nebuchadnezzar. He actually kind of fell onto the throne. He was a peasant who ended up getting the throne. It's a wild story. But there's no relation there. And what we've learned is that when we go back and when we reread Daniel, the modern scholarship on Daniel now is that it was written probably during the Greek invasion before the Maccabean revolt. It was probably written before the Maccabee revolt or probably at the beginning of the Maccabee revolt. And the reasoning for this is the closer that Daniel gets when he's talking about things closer to the Greek invasion, he's extremely accurate. And then when he starts getting closer and closer to stuff concerning Babylon, he gets widely inaccurate. So for example, if Daniel is writing during the Greek invasion, we get the great dream that he got with the breaking of the kingdoms. And most people think that fourth kingdom is Rome. Christians love to think that it's Rome, but Christians forget that in the ancient world, the Medes were, even though we know now that they were part of the Persians, we know now they were, but back during the time period in every ancient record that we find, everybody thought the Medes were their own kingdom. They thought they were their own people. And so when you get to that fourth kingdom, being the toes of the statue, and you learn that after Alexander fell, when Alexander passed away, his kingdom got split up amongst his generals. And so Daniel's probably experiencing the Greek invasion. He's seeing Judas Maccabee and the Levites getting ready to rebel. And he's like, and he starts writing about it. And, and he writes it as if it's taken place in the past, because if the Jews win, if we win this battle against Greece, it's a fulfilled prophecy, right? And this is something that we see. It's just a type of literature that we have. And so it could be the case that Mark was written in the 2nd century, but written to appear to be written around the time of the temple destruction to give legitimacy to it being prophesying the destruction of the temple.
Okay. So okay. Let's see. Are you familiar with undesigned coincidences? Or do you know? Are you familiar with that argument?
Sure. It's just saying that there's a
Um,
bunch of coincidences, and they're just more than coincidences.
yeah. So it's like these ideas. I don't have too many that I could reference offhand. I'll try and Google them so I could um have some of
And
these.
real quick, because
Sure.
we do have Susan in here, so I do want to make sure we do get to Susan. And
Oh
we've
yeah.
been talking for a little bit, so I am going to put a 15-minute timer on so we can have this wrapped up in like 15
Okay.
minutes, if that's okay.
Yeah. Sure.
All right.
Sorry. I didn't. I was.
Oh no, no,
I
no,
didn't
you're
mean
good,
to
you're good.
like.
No, 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 I'm enjoying the conversation, but I just need
Cool.
to be respectful for Susan as well, and I
Yeah.
do need to get to
Absolutely.
bed, so I want to get in one more debate before I go to bed.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. So as concise as I can be. I would put forth the argument that the undesigned coincidences where you have these matchups that don't they're not direct, but they are complementary, that would suggest that it isn't this later writing, and uh, the yeah, well, let's just start there. I would suggest that would suggest that it's not later writing, because if it were later writings, then um, we wouldn't expect the undesigned coincidences.
Well, I think when we get into undesigned coincidences, though, it's really easy. Again, if it is the case where, like, Mark, let's say Mark is written in the mid 2nd century to appear older, because again, we don't have any mentions of any of the Gospels. And even with Papias, it's still in the 2nd century, right? Still, in the early mid 2nd century, with Papias, even if he is writing about it. So we have no mentions of it because the coincidences go both ways, right? So we have no mention of the Gospels. We have church fathers not agreeing on things, all the things that I mentioned before. We have these working. So then we have to look at what is more likely that happened. And then when we look at Mark in priority, it appears that Mark was written first. The other Gospels are leaning onto it. Um, and if that is the case, and it was written in, even if it's written in 100, let's say it's written in 100, well, the temple's already destroyed by then. Um, and so I think, that can go both ways, if that makes sense.
Um,
And we have
I
evidence that it is a Jewish type of literature. It's a literary style of writing things today, but making them appear to have been in the past.
so I guess the questions that I would have for that would be, um, you would have to you would have to assume that this is happening in, like, well, that would mean that there's quite literally nothing before, what did you say, 200, 250? So we'll just say 200, to be as generous as we can here. There's
Oh,
literally no.
I'd go as early as the one. We could go as
Okay.
early as like the 140s. I'm okay with
Okay.
that.
Yeah, we'll say 150, rounded out, nice easy number. So there's nothing before 150, or there's nothing before 140, um, and all of these are being written later. Uh,
Mhm.
my first sorry, I want to stick with, I don't want to jump around. I'm trying to be as consistent as I can here. Um, do you believe that the authors for each of the gospels would have been in contact with one another?
No, no. That's why I think. So my belief is, I believe So in Greco-Roman society, mystery cults were super popular. In fact, over in Pompeii, they just uncovered a temple to Dionysus, and it's just a super small temple. It's like a room, and on the walls is a mural for a ritual that they do. It's a mural for a ritual that they do. And it's just
Okay.
for a mystery cult of Dionysus, which is why it took them so long to find it, because it's like hidden, and they found it. And so mystery cults were a thing. And so I don't, to be clear, I don't believe that like a group of people got together and said, we're going to make up Christianity. I don't think that's what it is. In fact, I don't know how much reading you like to do, but I have a good friend on this on TikTok. I don't know if you have TikTok, but he wrote a
I
book called
try to
Christ.
stay off.
That's fine. He wrote a book called Christ Before Jesus. So if you go back and watch this, because this is you saw it on YouTube, so you'll see the book Christ Before Jesus. He I forgot where I was. Oh, mystery cults. But yeah, so
Yeah.
it's just a belief that like we had these mystery cults, and it's called Christ Before Jesus, because the idea is that there was a title, that there was a god figure that was being worshipped, and then Jesus was associated to that name later. And the idea is
Okay.
that there was a mystery cult worshiping some kind of deity. As we've done more research, we believe it was probably Serapis, mainly because when you look at Serapis, Serapis was a syncretic god that comes initially from Asia Minor, but it was the Ptolemies in Egypt who made him popular. He went to Greece, became extremely popular in Greece, spread to Rome. In Rome, he became increasingly popular in Rome. However, he was never formally adopted into the Roman pantheon. And once Julius Caesar was executed and his nephew Octavian Augustus took over, Octavian banned Serapis worship. He banned it. You'll see where Serapis is oftentimes he'll be referred to as Serapis or even Serapis Christos. We also
Okay.
have where Christ is a term used for other things as well.
Sure. Yeah.
So it is, and then when you look at the miracles that Jesus performs, every one of them has something to do with one of the syncretic gods that Serapis is made up of. Serapis, again, he's made up of 5 Egyptian gods, 5 Greek gods. It was Ptolemy who Ptolemy descends from one of Alexander the Great's generals. He was trying to unify Greece and Egypt. So he had a dream about this god named Serapis in Asia Minor and in Sinope. In Sinope, which is where Marcion's from. It's important. That's where Marcion's from. Asia Minor and Sinope. And that area is where a lot of the early church fathers are from. It's kind of ironic, I think. But he brings this statue over to Egypt, makes a syncretic god. It gets banned in Rome. And then I just believe we see this evolution of religion with Serapis Christus. I think we get a catalyst of it with the Bar Kokhba revolt. And with the Bar Kokhba revolt, which was the last of the Jewish-Roman wars, this is where we really see Christianity taking off, is after the Bar Kokhba revolt. This is where all of a sudden we're getting all these Christian writers. This is kind of where the church fathers that we definitely know existed, this is kind of where they take off. And so I think we end up with probably Mark being written, and then so Mark gets written first. And then as the religion continues to evolve into what we know Christianity to be today, I think that other writers, other anonymous writers, looked at Mark, read it, and they said, I want to take this in this direction. And then Luke, or, Matthew or Luke, whichever the other one was, as a matter of fact, I'd probably go look at that one. Whichever one added more to it, went into more detail, which I believe it'd be Matthew, because Luke makes some pretty big mistakes, and Matthew corrects some of these mistakes. And so I think it probably went Matthew, Luke, part of Luke being written, and then Luke and Matthew as they're kind of being written at the same time, and the authors were using each other's works.
Okay, so you would say that they were in contact then, or at least they
I
had
don't know
some
if I
kind of.
would.
Okay, then I would ask, like, how do they have each other's works then?
I would say they, and that I don't know. They might have been in contact. There's a case they might have been in contact. Or it could be the case. Yeah, that one I don't exactly have an answer for. I don't have an answer for that one.
Okay.
They could have been in contact. It could also be the case that maybe um the original manuscripts that we don't have anymore, maybe destroyed. Whoever was writing what became Matthew and Luke, and again, this is just my own conjecture on this. They were using so whoever was writing Matthew had Luke and then so there's like a proto Luke, proto Matthew, if that makes sense, and then those manuscripts got destroyed. That could be the case too. It's not unreasonable to think that. Do I think that's exactly what happened? No, but it could also be the case that they were in contact. That could be a case as well.
Uh, okay, so I guess then my question would be, I know Luke and Acts are used for archaeology in excuse me, in Judea and that region. He's considered incredibly reliable for getting the proper names of certain titles, or rather,
Mhm.
he's attributed as getting correct names for people, correct titles, correct regions, these
Mhm.
sorts of things.
Well,
And
kinda.
what do you mean, kind of?
Yeah, so like for example, when you read Matthew, right? Matthew states that Herod was the king, Herod the Great specifically, because Archelaus was his son. So we get that King Herod was ruling Judea when Jesus was born. Now, Herod the Great passed away in 4 BCE, right? However, in Luke, when Jesus is being born, the governor is Quirinius. But Quirinius didn't become the governor. We know this through Tacitus. Quirinius didn't become the governor until 6 CE. And so between Matthew and Luke, we have a 10-year gap. And both of these, you can find both these names in in Matthew chapter 2 and Luke chapter 2. Luke chapter 1, Luke is, and both Luke and Acts, because Luke's and Acts are written by the same person. Luke's and Acts are being written to a most excellent or most high, depends on your
Yes.
translation, but has an honorific title to a person named Theophilus. But we
Uh-huh.
don't know who this Theophilus is. The earliest, it could be one of two people. The first Theophilus that it could potentially be, but we don't believe so, is was the high priest Theophilus. However, by time the letters of Paul, especially Acts and Luke, are being written, Acts and Luke being written, um, Theophilus is no longer the high priest. He's on his deathbed, so it doesn't make sense for them to be writing to him. The next Theophilus that we know of is Theophilus of Antioch. Theophilus of Antioch served in the mid-2nd century. He was a bishop. And when we take a look at the fact that when you take a look at the Greek of both Luke and Acts, the wordage used there is more sophisticated, like it's writing to a learned person or a person of stature. Um, and so
Sure.
like it's like I said,
Um,
there's just issues with them, which is why I don't know if I would say they actually sat down and talked to each other,
okay.
because this just wouldn't make sense.
Okay. All right. So I see we're kind of running out of time, so I don't wanna overstep. Um, I I wish we could have gotten a little. I'm sorry. I wish I could have been a little bit more pointed for you. Um,
Yeah,
but
no, not a problem.
um, I is there um it I'll just I'll kind of let this uh end here for me, so that way you can get moving along. Um, do you do these do you do this pretty regularly,
Yeah,
if
I'm
I may
I'm
be so
live.
bold?
Yeah, no, and you're welcome up anytime. You've been super respectful. I
Cool.
appreciate it. Let's give Tolvir,
Oh,
Tulvir. Let's give Tolvir some massive W's on both YouTube and TikTok. Yeah,
thank
so
you.
I'm live. I'm live Sunday through Wednesday. My topics change.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, but a book that I highly recommend. It's only again, it's not that I'm trying to talk up my good friend. But Christ Before Jesus, again, we'll have it on screen. You'll be able to see it when you go back and look at this.
All right.
Christ Before Jesus. It's only like $3 as an audiobook. And my friend Jaron, he's one of the authors of the book. I'm not an author, but he's one of the authors of the book. And they utilize he's a data scientist, and they utilize stellometry when they take a look at it. And stellometry just attributes authorship. And you'll be surprised they found that the pastorals in the letters of Paul, the pastorals appear to be Polycarp. Luke, probably written by Polycarp is what data science seems to show.
Huh. Um. Okay, yeah. I mean, I can't promise I'm gonna get it anytime soon. But yeah, I'd love to come back up and try and maybe with a more concise topic, try and give you something better, because I feel
Yeah,
kind of
not
bad
a
not
problem.
getting into it. But
Not a
yeah,
problem. But I've super enjoyed this, and you have a
cool.
fantastic rest of your evening.
Yeah, you too, man. I'll be around. I'll
All right. And see, Christian, see, it is possible to have a super respectful conversation without yelling at each other, without going off the walls with each other. We can definitely have a super thing. And if you notice, if what's his name is still here, notice that I never once invoked "there's that Christian love." If you're afraid of somebody invoking "there's that Christian love," maybe you need to take a look at your feet and see if the shoes fit. And we're gonna go ahead and jump right into Susan. This will be the last one for the evening. And Susan, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic, and hey, I appreciate you waiting. You've been waiting for almost an hour, for 49 minutes, and I greatly appreciate it. Real quick, let's give Susan some massive W's in both chats. And are you a Christian?
Yes, I am a Christian.
All right. I'm an atheist, and
Nice
I
to
don't
meet you.
believe that Christianity is true. Can you give
Okay.
me your strongest argument for why you believe Christianity is true?
Same reason as the previous guy who came here. I do believe that I do believe in the life, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I believe that the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are historical documents. I know that in extra biblical documents, meaning that historical documents that are not in the Bible that we have in the West, the 66 books. I know the Ethiopian Bible has other books inside, but the 66 books that we have in the Bible, outside of those, there are documents citing Jesus Christ's life and talking about him. And
Yeah, let's
then,
talk about those.
okay,
Yeah. So can you give me any of these historical documents?
yeah. Let me pull this up.
And I'm telling you now, if you mention the Shroud of Turin, I'm Jewish, and that's like my Babylonian exile.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So the Shroud of Turin, while you're looking up your sources, the Shroud of Turin is an artifact that was found in France. And initially the Catholic Church sought to say it was fraud. It's believed to be the shroud that Jesus's body was wrapped in. But because where it was located in France was part of the pilgrimage to Jerusalem during the Crusades, the Catholic Church was finally like, oh yeah, we can use this to convert people. And so now it's an artifact that has been proven to be false.
What
But
did you say it's called?
Christians, the Shroud of
What-
Turin,
Okay, keep going.
because it's maintained today in Turin, Italy.
Mm.
But there's been a bunch of studies done on it. It was carbon dated to the 1300s. It's has a 3-in-1 chevron weave, which did not exist before about the 1100s. There was a DNA test that was done on it back in 2014. But the scientists who did the testing did not submit it for peer review. And when some other scientists decided to submit it for their own peer review. When they responded back and they said, hey, we have issues with your methodology, the scientists who did the study, they redacted the study, which is a blemish on them forever. They redacted it. And then if you research it, you'll look in 2022, there was another study that was done trying to use this X-ray imaging to prove its authenticity. But the issue with this is 2 of the scientists who were on the 2014 redacted study were on this study, and they even in the study it states that there's issues why the dating for the Shroud of Turin is off. It's just not an accurate study. And it's never been used before, and it's never been used since.
And what did you say that one's called? The second one?
I don't remember what it's called. You could look up a 2022 Shroud of Turin study, and you'll see something about X-ray scattering.
Okay, so no. One of them here, it says something about let's see, a historian, Tacitus.
Tacitus. Yep.
So I'm assuming you've heard about this.
I have. Yep.
Yeah. So it says it says writing in his annals annals ANNALS, he recorded the death of Jesus at the hands of Pontius Pilate. I can read the text if you want, or is that enough?
Yeah, read it, because I want you to notice something key in this, what he says when he reads it. So go ahead and read it.
Okay. Consequently, to get rid of the report, Nero fastened the guilt and inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations, called Christians, by the populace. Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilatus, and a most mischievous superstition, thus checked for the moment again, broke out not only in Judea, the first source of the evil, but even in Rome, where all things hideous and shameful from every part of the world find their center and become popular. Accordingly, an arrest was first made of all who pleaded guilty. Then, upon their information, an immense multitude was convicted, not so much of the crime of firing the city as of hatred against mankind.
Yep. So the issue with this is, so Tacitus was a senator. He also served with a man named Pliny the Younger. We'll get to that in just a minute. But Tacitus was a senator. He's known as a great historian because he had access to the Roman libraries because he was in Rome. And you see this image over here. This image here is part of that record. Now, these records were kept by the Christians. We found them by the Christians. And this red box here, you'll see where there's that red box. And let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. When we kept records, back in this time period, we did, you had to copy things by hand. We didn't have copy machines. So this here says Christioni. Now, you'll see in this red box, you see how you see that gap right there? Where it looks like it's 2 different words because of the gap. Now, if you notice, are you able to see my cursor on your screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you notice, this letter here is darker than the rest of the word, right? That's important. Now, you'll see this right here is an erase mark. If you look at the rest of this manuscript, you won't see this. Now, the reason why this is an issue is when we kept manuscripts at this time, in order to make sure they stayed authentic, if you made a mistake, you were not allowed to erase. You had to destroy that whole page, right? Now, when we zoom out and we come here, you see this letter here in the blue? This letter is what an R and I looks like in Latin. This is the Latin for the R and I letter. If this actually said Christioni, like it was changed to say, this letter should have been put in here. But it's just whoever did this,
hold on,
whatever
you said
reason,
that letter, the blue letter should have been put in the red, is what you're saying?
Yeah, should have been here. Yeah.
Why are you saying that?
Yeah, because whoever did this, like, did a horrible job. Like, like when they're changing it. So modern scholars today believe that this originally said Christians, is what it
Okay.
initially said, was Christians. Um, so, and we'll get to why that's important here in a minute. As to the rest of what you were talking about, do you know what an interpolation, not interpretation, interpolation? Do you know what that is?
No, can you explain?
Yeah, so an interpolation, again, things had to be copied by hand. And so if I
Okay.
wanted to add something, it was extremely easy for me to just add it as I'm copying manuscripts. Which is why this manuscript is so important, because we see an error in it. We see where somebody was trying to edit the manuscript and they didn't destroy it, right? We're literally one scribal error. And you heard me talking with the other guy about stellometry. What stellometry does is it seeks authorship. It's a peer-reviewed source. In fact, the person who wrote this book is actually currently has been submitted to 6 different journals for peer review. Peer review takes a while, so we're waiting for the results for those to come back. But it's been submitted for peer review. And they're data scientists. So stellometry seeks authorship, and what it does is, do you know who Robert Galbraith is? Have you ever heard of Robert Galbraith?
No.
Robert Galbraith is a British author. Robert Galbraith, he writes crime fiction. However, she is also the author of another British work that you're probably familiar with. It takes place in this place, I believe it's called the Wizarding World. It's J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter, but she wanted to keep Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling attached to each other. So when she writes her other books, she does it under a pen name of Robert Galbraith. But she wanted to keep that secret and didn't want nobody to know that that was her. But people started researching Robert Galbraith. They couldn't find any information about Robert Galbraith. He didn't exist. So people ran stellometry on Robert Galbraith's books, and they started running them against a bunch of other British books, British authors, and found out it was J.K. Rowling, and J.K. Rowling and her publisher finally had to admit that, yes, it was her. Let's say I hack into your work email and I write a nasty letter to your boss.
Okay.
And let's say you're going to get fired for it. You are able to run stellometry on my letter that I sent to your boss, and you can run that and compare it to any of your past emails that you have written. And if they don't have anything that is definitively mine, like if they don't have like a letter that, hey, this is Cyber Deconstruction's letter compared to this, they won't know that it's me. But what they will know is that it wasn't you. They'll be able to look at that look at the words, the common words used, and they'll say, yeah, that's not you. You didn't write this. And so so stellometry attributes authorship. So when we look at Tacitus and we run stellometry on that line that you said about Jesus being crucified by Pontius Pilate, that entire line, it's an interpolation. We don't know who wrote it. We just know that it's not Tacitus who wrote it. We believe it was probably Tertullian, because when we run stellometry, it pops up with Tertullian. And Tertullian is also the first, he was the church father who kind of shifted things to Latin. And he's the one who kind of first mentions and says, hey, check this out. So none of the early church fathers before Tertullian who had access to Tacitus ever pointed it out. Tertullian was the first one to point it out. So we believe Tacitus was an interpolation.
Okay, to be clear, so you're saying this, point out the line that you're saying was interpolated?
Yeah, let me go get the whole thing said real quick. So let me get his writing brought up. I have his whole thing brought up in Latin. But the part where he says all human efforts, all the lavish gifts of the emperor to get rid of the report, Nero fasting guilt and inflicted most of their exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations called Christians by the populace. Chrysis, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilate, and most mischievous superstition, thus checked for the moments, again broke out not only in Judea, but the first source of the evil, but even in Rome, where all things hideous and shameful from every part of the world. That whole section is believed to have been an interpolation.
Okay, and interpolation.
It was
To be
added
clear,
in by
that's
somebody else.
by somebody else who is not
Mhm.
Tacitus.
Who's not Tacitus. It was whoever was. So keep in mind, when we look at that manuscript, let me get this open up. So when we look at this Tacitus manuscript, that's not Tacitus's handwriting, right? We don't have, like, whenever we look at like the manuscripts, like we don't have the original manuscript of Matthew. We don't have it. All we have are copies and people that copied it down.
Okay, so you're saying that whatever this copy is,
This is the oldest copy.
This is the oldest copy.
Mhm.
If this is so, this oldest copy that we have, so it's not. We know for sure it's not Tacitus' handwriting, but the oldest copy that we have, you're saying it's an interpolation because of the stylometry.
Stylometry. Yep.
Stylometry.
Yep.
Okay.
Stylometry. Yep.
Simply because of the style of writing, not because of the handwriting, correct?
Yeah, they don't look at the handwriting. No, that is paleolithography that they do that on. That's how. Go ahead.
And you said no other historians, no other person pointed this out before. Who pointed it out?
Tertullian.
Can you spell his name?
Yeah,
Never
so
mind.
Tertullian's the first one who points this out.
Okay.
Yeah, I know TikTok can't see the screen. I apologize. Oh, I can open it up because this one I actually have saved on my thing. So this one I can actually bring up so you guys can see what I'm showing.
So just for clarification, you can correct me if my question is wrong. Nobody pointed out. This guy later on pointed out. Was it confirmed that what he pointed out was true by anybody else?
What do you mean pointed out that it was true?
Like you said that no one pointed this out. Some guy comes and points this out. And so if one guy comes and says, hey, this is an interpolation, did other people come and say, oh, hey, yeah, you're right? Or was he the only one that said it and the only one who has made that claim?
Well, so the way the early church fathers work is they work off of tradition. So essentially, if they wrote it, other church fathers would latch onto it because they're trying to keep the succession going. So, and keep in mind when he died in 240 CE AD is when he passed away. He's known as the father of Latin in the church, which is why. So he was probably the first to really focus in on Latin. So no, none of the other people, none of the other Christians at least, looked at it and said, no, that's wrong. But they don't have a reason to either. In fact, they've got motivation. They're motivated to say, oh yeah, that is what that says.
So to be clear, you are making the assumption that those before this Tertullian guy were not inclined to be honest.
Well, they just did.
These multiple men before the Tertullian guy.
No, what I'm saying, these people before Tertullian never wrote anything about it. And real quick, I got a super chat for $19.99 from Juniper Berry on YouTube. Give your heart to Jesus Christ. It doesn't have to be a fancy prayer. Just call on him to a place of vulnerability. We'll do that here in just a minute. We'll do that. I'll read some scriptures with that. No, so what I'm saying is that whoever did this interpolation, we don't know 100%, right?
So we
But
don't know 100% if this is an interpolation, correct?
well, no, we know it. We know it's an interpolation because it doesn't pop up with Tacitus. Tacitus didn't write it. We know that Tacitus didn't write it because it doesn't pop up with him. When we run it against Tacitus's other writings, it doesn't pop up.
When you say it doesn't pop up, you mean the sentence itself doesn't pop up, or the style of writing in this one sentence?
So the way, if CBJ was in here, I'd have him pop up, but I think he's in bed. So it does what's called a dingogram. As a matter of fact,
Okay,
does he
wait,
even
wait, wait,
have
wait. Pause before you go. Before you go into that, let's do this. I am inclined to take what you're saying and look into it. I don't think we'll come to the same conclusion for now. So let me look into this. I have taken note of it. In the meantime, can I address something that you mentioned with the previous guy who was here?
Sure.
Okay. With the previous guy who was here, when he mentioned that he believes in, the historical evidence for the Gospels, you brought up a question about circumcision, and you asked if the Gospels were there during a certain time, why were the church fathers still arguing about circumcision? Okay, so I wanted to address that actually. You mentioned the writings of Paul, so I do want to separate that. The writings of Paul and the Gospels, which are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are different things. You may know that, but in case anyone else watching doesn't know that, so Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are the Gospels, the eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life, and then Paul's writings are different writings within the New Testament. One of Paul's writings is the book of Galatians. He writes a letter to the Galatians. And in it, actually, he starts it off by saying, he says, grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ, who gave himself for our sins.
What's the scripture?
Galatians, I'm starting in Galatians chapter 1, verse 3.
Okay.
So it says, grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus. And this is the English Standard Version, in case anyone's interested. English Standard Version, ESV. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ, who gave himself for our sins to deliver us from the present evil age, according to the will of our God and Father, to whom be the glory forever and ever. Amen. I am astonished that you are so quickly deserting him who called you in the grace of Christ, and are turning to a different gospel. Not that there is another one, but there are some who trouble you and want to distort the gospel of Christ. But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to the one we preach to you, let him be accursed. As we have said before, so now I say again, if anyone is preaching to you a gospel contrary to the one you received, let him be accursed. For am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. So then he goes on with some of his corrections, but this is where I want to, I read this first point to say that in Paul's time, when he was teaching the different churches and spreading the gospel to different cities, there were false teachings being taught, which is why he started off by saying, he started off in 6. He says, I am astonished that you are so quickly deserting him who called you in the grace of Christ and are turning to a different gospel. So during that time, there was deception happening, but Paul's writings, Paul does preach the gospel according to the eyewitness accounts. And he comes in and corrects people when they're being deceived by others. And then I want to jump now down to Galatians chapter 5.
Hold on. What's this other? Hold on, real quick. When he says, are turning to a different gospel.
Yeah.
What gospel are they turning to?
So he was what gospel?
Yeah, it says
so
Christians are turning to a different God. What you just read in Galatians 1, verse 6? I'm astonished that you are quickly deserting the one who called you in the grace of Christ and are turning to a different gospel. What different gospel are they turning to?
So right after that, he's very clear. Not that there is another one. But he says that there are some who trouble you and want to distort
the gospel of Christ. Now, if we have a case right now, listen. if
Okay.
we have a case, right? Because we run into issues with Paul where Paul is clearly speaking out against like Gnosticism, right? He speaks out
In
against it.
in this in this place specifically, or you mean in general?
Just in general, because you got to remember, we have a case where they are starting up their church, right? When do you believe the Pauline letters were written?
I could look them up specifically. Or one of my Bibles has dates written at the front sometimes. But you can continue on with what you're saying.
Yeah, so these are super early, right? And so if it is the case where we have, at least 13 people right now running all over the Roman countryside teaching the same gospel, the gospel of Jesus Christ. We've got at least 13 people doing this. We don't really have room for like there being people turning to other gospels, and some who are confusing you. Like, who are these some who are confusing you, right? I think this would just support that there is these issues coming up once we get into the mid-second century with Gnosticism, where because Gnosticism was the plague, was the big issue in the second century for the Christian church. In the early to mid second century, Gnosticism was the issue the church was facing. Gnosticism almost destroyed what would be modern day Christianity. And so it just seems like that these are Paul like being like, hey, stay away from this. But this only makes sense if Paul's being written in the mid second century. It's the only time this line makes sense.
I'm trying to understand the I'm having a hard time understanding what you're saying because I'm having a hard time understanding like the significance. Like, what point are you trying to make? Like, it's
Do you know
one
what
thing to say
Gnosticism is?
no. Well, yes,
So
but I forgot. So no, actually.
So Gnosticism, it was considered like the first heresy of the church, right?
Okay.
Gnosticism was like the first branch away from what would be like the early Christianity, according to Paul. And essentially we don't see anything from Gnosticism popping up until the second century. We have no evidence, no nothing of Gnosticism existing in the first century. It's only an issue in the second century. And so if Paul is writing about, hey, people are going to be turning to other gospels, right? Turning to other teachings, the only other teachings that are around at this time, if Paul is, living in the first century, the only teachings that are being taught are quite literally the teachings from Paul and the apostles. But once we get into the mid second century, then we have an issue because then we have people branching off left and right.
Okay, so number one, it sounds like you're assuming that the only false teachings that could have come up at that time was Gnosticism, or you're assuming that could have been the only problem.
Oh no, there were
Which is
plenty of
not
other ones, but Gnosticism
So
is
why are you
considered the
assuming that
first
this is
heresies because Gnosticism is considered the first heresy of the church.
according to
Like, this is the church fathers. This isn't disputed by the
okay,
church
right?
fathers. If you look at
But I'm not worried.
if you look at all of the early Christians that were excommunicated for heresy, it was because of Gnosticism.
So I'm not currently worried about the church fathers. I'm currently looking at the text for what it says, and since he is addressing that there was a different gospel, he actually goes on, not a different gospel, but a different teaching, that was false. He actually goes on in 5, and in Galatians 5:2. It says, "Look, I, Paul, say to you that if you accept circumcision, Christ will be of no advantage to you. I testify again to every man who accepts circumcision that he is obligated to keep the whole law. You are severed from Christ. You who would be justified by the law, you have fallen away from grace. For through the Spirit, by faith, we ourselves eagerly wait for the hope of righteousness. For in Christ Jesus, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision counts for anything, but only faith working through love. You were running well, who hindered you from obeying the truth. This persuasion is not from him who calls you. A little leaven leavens the whole lump. I have confidence in the Lord that you will take no other view, and the one who is troubling you will bear the penalty, whoever he is."
But hold on, let's go back up there though, because again, this is an issue with early Christianity. This is you're confirming what I was saying,
which
right?
is
So
okay,
again,
continue.
if we listen to this, like you're confirming exactly what I was saying. Once again, I testify every man who lets himself be circumcised that he is obligated to obey the entire law, right? So
So
you
what
are
you're saying that
obligated. He's stating that you must follow the law.
no, so yeah, so when he
Mhm.
says that you are obligated to follow the law, any person who has become a Christian understands that they couldn't even measure up to the law to begin with. So he's not saying it to say you have to actually now go and follow the law. He's saying this is the burden that you put yourself under, and this is the burden that you were delivered from in the first place. He's saying don't go back. He's telling you this is the burden you have to bear, further signifying that they should not go back. Anyone who would read that would say, I don't want to be.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what he's saying. He's saying because again, the circumcision is like a thing that is like, because again, the idea of being circumcised is being part of the group, right? And so that's what he's saying is that if you feel like you need to be circumcised, like you gotta realize that the circumcision isn't what saves you, right? You're getting circumcised for no reason. But if you're gonna do it, go follow the old law. Like that's what he's saying.
Because right,
Right?
because
He's saying because circumcision, if you get yourself circumcision, you're showing a lack of faith, right? So
if
that's
you
what I'm saying.
circumcise, so
So
circumcision,
hold on.
okay,
But what I'm saying is, and the reason why the church fathers are so pivotal in this is, and the reason why this further supports that this was written in the 2nd century is this should have settled it. There is no reason why Justin Martyr is saying that because Justin Martyr's whole argument was that Christians, although they're not obligated to observe the law like the Israelites, they needed to recognize the fulfillment of the signs in Christ, and therefore he acknowledged the historical importance of circumcision. So he
okay.
was
I have
like,
a
"No,
question.
you need it. The
I have a
circumcision
question.
is important." Yeah.
Why are you using other people's opinions and debates outside of what the scriptures themselves say in order to determine what the faith actually is, right? Because when it
Because
comes
I
to
believe hold on.
okay,
Paul, I
uh-huh,
believe Paul, and the evidence supports that Paul was
uh-huh,
written, it was written by Marcion in the Apostolicon in the mid 2nd century. Marcion released Evangelion. Evangelion was published in the 130s. Shortly after the Apostolicon, which is the first record of the letters of Paul that we have. Paul initially, do you know what Paul's name was by the early church fathers? Do you know what they called him?
I know what Paul's name was before he became Paul. It was Saul.
No. What did the early church fathers call him?
I don't know.
The apostle to the heretics, because the church fathers recognized that he came from Marcion. We don't have any evidence of Paul at all before Marcion. Some other issues with this is that we have Paul writes about a lot of shipwrecks, right?
I do
If you
not
read
recall
Acts.
him writing.
If
Oh,
you read Acts, you'll learn that Paul was
he
shipwrecked quite a
experiences.
bit.
Yes, he experiences
Yeah,
shipwreck in Acts
yeah.
specifically. Yes.
Josephus writes about shipwrecks, same time period that Paul is supposedly written, right? So
Okay,
Josephus,
let me just to be clear here. So I just want to make sure to write this down. Okay, so you're
Mhm.
saying that all of Paul's letters are falsified. They are not written by anyone named Paul. They are written by
correct.
some guy named Marcion.
Well, probably by his school. It's a pseudonym for his school, which is a type of literature that was done at the time.
Okay, so Marcion is a pseudonym for what? His
No.
school?
Paul
Uh-huh.
is a pseudonym for the Marcionite school.
Okay, so you're saying that the letters of Paul are coming out of a
Mhm.
school.
Correct. You know that during antiquity there were schools of thought, right?
Okay, just to be clear. So if because I also am not inclined to agree with this because before I became a Christian, I did a lot of research into the historical stuff. I don't remember everything that I researched into, but I remember looking at both sides very I don't know what diligently, and I believe that if the letters of Paul really were falsified or they were fake, they came out of the school of Marcion. I believe that it would have been brought up. However, I'm
It
willing
was
to
brought up. The church fathers brought it up. Yes.
okay, I'm willing to look into this.
Mhm.
Um,
And some other
however,
things to look into. Well, hold on real quick. Some other
okay,
things to look into is that Philo lived during this time. Philo was a Jew who lived in Alexandria. He traveled to Jerusalem. And a lot of Paul's teachings were right up his alley. Right up his alley. Philo
so
never talks about it. Hold on. Philo never talks about him, right? Josephus, whenever we hear about Paul's shipwrecks, turns out that Josephus, if you go read Josephus, go read his autobiography, and then go read War of the Jews, you'll learn that these shipwrecks, Josephus was on those ships as well. So, like, if Josephus is on these ships, why does Josephus not mention Paul? Why is it the case that we have no mention of Paul or the apostles, outside of Christian sources? Not a one.
well, okay, so while I would also have to look into that to see whether I agree or disagree with you, irregardless of whether or not they come out of Christian sources, no one you don't have to be a Christian to recognize that the Gospels and the New Testament documents are all historical documents. So, irregardless of how you look at them, they are
No,
historical
they're not.
documents
They
and
get
should be
things
considered
wrong.
as such.
They get things wrong.
They are historical documents, correct?
What do you mean by historical? Like, are they old documents? Sure, they're old documents. I wouldn't say that makes them like
Okay.
historically
And they get
accurate.
and then they get so let's talk about the Gospels then. They get things wrong according to who?
Yeah. So, you listen to the last one. Who was the king of Judea when Jesus was born, according to Matthew?
Was it Herod?
Yeah, it was Herod. Go look at Matthew chapter 2.
All right, wait for me to get there. Matthew chapter 2. Okay.
Now that says during the time of King Herod, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you go down, I think it's verse 26. It'll mention it's when they're coming back from Egypt. It'll mention that Herod.
Verse 26.
Yes, I think it. Yeah, I think of chapter 2. I think it's verse 26. It's down there in the 20s. It's when they're coming out of Egypt, and it mentions how they are settling in Nazareth because Joseph doesn't like Herod's son, who is now ruling because Herod passed away, Archelaus. Do you see where Archelaus is mentioned?
Okay, I see it. 22.
Yep, there you go, 22. So that's how we know that it's Herod the Great, because Herod the Great was the only Herod who had a son named Archelaus. Now, Herod the Great passed away in 4 BCE. So that was before the turn of the century. Now, if you go to Luke chapter 2.
Okay.
It's going to mention in Luke chapter 2.
If you have a real quick, if you have a link showing me that Herod died in what'd you say 2 BCE?
Josephus writes about it.
Can you send if you have the link, if you could send it to me in the chat, that would be great.
I'm in
Luke chapter 2.
Yeah, now if you look at Luke chapter 2, it mentions that it's being written by, or not being written, but it's they're going to Bethlehem during the time of the reign of the governor Quirinius. Now, Quirinius served as the governor starting in 6 CE. We know this from Tacitus. And we have coins of him appearing in 6 CE. So we have coins with him in 6 CE. Nothing predating that. And in fact, we know where he was, according to Tacitus, during the time of Herod's reign. So he and Herod never served together. So we have a 10-year gap between the birth stories as told in Matthew and Luke. There's a 10-year gap.
I'm still looking. Hold on. Give me a second to find the one in Luke.
It's Luke chapter 2, verse 1, or verse 2.
1. Oh, okay. Verse
Yeah.
2. My bad. I was in 4.
Or the chapter 2, verse 1 or 2. Sorry, not 1, chapter 2.
And so you said there's what, a 10-year difference?
There's a 10-year gap between the birth stories.
According to these other historians that you mentioned.
According to Tacitus, who you tried to quote, according
Correct.
to Tacitus, and also according to Josephus. But Tacitus, when it talks about Quinorius, Tacitus writes actually quite extensively about him. He talks about him being on the battlefield. He writes about how after the battlefield, he was such a great person, such an honorable person, that he was...
I want to clarify something. That they wrote the dates specifically. Like, these are not estimated dates. They wrote the dates specifically.
They wrote the dates. No, they write who's reigning under whose emperorship and what they're doing. So like,
they don't write the dates specifically. The dates are estimated. Correct.
Correct.
As with other documents in history, the dates are estimated.
Correct, but we know that Quinorius didn't serve with Herod because under Herod, so Quinorius is the first governor of Judea. Essentially what happened is after Herod passed, so under Herod, Judea was just a protectorate. It wasn't an actual province of Rome. It was just a protectorate, which means Rome says, hey, you guys get to self-govern. We're going to put in a puppet king because Herod was a puppet king put in by the Roman Empire. But they were a protectorate, meaning they were still self-governing.
So
and essentially...
to be clear, actually, I want to say something. So you said that there's a 10-year difference. You mentioned that, correct, the first one with the Quirius guy in Luke. No, the second one, the Quirius guy in Luke.
Yeah, right. Hold on. Let me respond to quotes real quick. Okay. Holy Mother of Jesus. Now the historians are not so valid because you're going to be going against what the historians say as well.
No, it's not. No, it's not going against what historians say. Typically, when historians date things, they typically do it within a range, right? So I'm not doing it to. So if you're talking about the historians that you quoted, like Tacitus and them,
these are dates that modern scholars agree with too.
Well, I was intentional about asking if they wrote a date specifically. They did not. So if they did not write a date, that means that it's based off of historians' estimations. And most documents have a range in which they date things. So I just needed it to be clear. I wasn't necessarily questioning you just to question you. But if we're going to have a discussion, I should make sure that things are clear. And that's for your audience, I guess, not really for you.
Yeah. So what we do know is that who they served under, right? And so, like, for example, when Herod was serving, they were a protectorate, right? So, and we know who Herod served under as a protectorate, right? So yeah, we'll just go look this up.
So this Quinarius guy, right? He is before the birth of Jesus, because they mention, during the days of the census, then they went to, it says, in order to register along with Mary, who was engaged to him and was with child. While they were there, the days were completed for her to give birth. And she gave birth to her firstborn son. So so before she gives birth is when, hold on, what'd you say, Luke? Yeah, before she gives birth.
Hold on. Why are they going to Bethlehem to begin with? What's the whole purpose of this trip they're taking?
I don't exactly remember, but I'm pretty sure for the census, you had to go maybe back to your own city. And I don't know where they were at the time, so I don't know.
Well,
To be very honest,
there's no evidence of that ever happening. That's just part of the story. But yeah,
no,
if
the
you go and
evidence,
you
no,
read,
the evidence is this text, right? So like you can question the text, but if I'm gonna look at this as a historical document, I'm gonna look at it as a historical document. I could say to myself, I see this as a historical document, but despite all that it says, I don't want to believe that Jesus Christ is God, and I don't want to believe that he died for my sins. I can say that, but I'm not going to disregard this historical document just because I have a problem with the Christian faith. No
sure, that's goofy, but yeah. So
So
they're
real
going
quick,
there for
wait,
a
wait.
census. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So Quirinius, so they mentioned Quirinius, then they mentioned that they need to travel somewhere for the census. This is before Jesus Christ was born. The other
Correct.
guy that you mentioned, Herod.
Herod. Yep.
So it says, let's see. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem, Judah, in the days of Herod the king, so after he was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the
Yep.
days of Herod the king, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. So it doesn't. Oh, that's right. I see you because you mentioned the 10-year difference. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I
And
see.
Quirinius served after Herod. He became the governor after Herod. And he became the governor because Archelaus didn't serve by himself. Archelaus served with his two brothers. They served three of them together, and they couldn't agree, and they fucked some shit up. Sorry, I'll be respectful. They messed some things up. And because they messed some things up, that's when Rome said, hey, you're no longer a protectorate. We let you be a protectorate because it gave you some good feels that you had your self-autonomy, but we're not doing that anymore. And they sent Quirinius in there to be the first, like, actual governor, right? And they became part of Syria. They became part of the governorate of Syria.
All right, let's see. I'm going to write this. Quirinius. You said governor before Herod?
No, he was governor after Herod.
Governor after Herod. And what did you say about the Aquarius? The Equo? What's the son's name?
Archelaus.
Yeah, I'll write that down too.
Yeah, Archelaus served with his two brothers, and they couldn't agree on a lot of things. They kind of messed some things up, and so they still, like, they were removed. Their position became purely symbolic. So, like, they were still like kings, but they had no power because it went to the Rome. Rome stepped in and said, you're not allowed to self-govern anymore. And that was just an illusion anyways. You're now part of Syria, and you're going to listen to Quirinius.
Okay, all right. So essentially, you don't believe in the Gospels because you say that they're historically inaccurate.
Mm-hmm.
For
they
the
have
reasons
anachronisms in them.
They have anachronisms in it. Okay.
Yep. The term rabbi doesn't exist until after 70 or around 70.
Can you spell that word? They have anachronisms? Say it again.
Yeah, anachronism. Yeah, I'll spell it here. Hold on real quick. So yeah, it's ANACH.
Oh, got it. Autocorrect just got me.
Do you know what an anachronism is?
No.
So if I was to tell you a story that George Washington crossed the Delaware in his Cybertruck, the anachronism in there would be the Cybertruck. You know that it's a false story, or at least I embellished it because Cybertrucks don't exist.
Okay. And then you said the term rabbi was what?
It's an anachronism. We don't have any Jewish literature at all before probably right around 60, but definitely 70. We don't have any literature where any Jewish literature that uses the term rabbi. And in the Greek, when they're writing it, they actually switch to the Hebrew for it. They don't write it in Greek, they write it in Hebrew. Try to, like, I guess, make it more authentic. In fact, the first rabbi is Rabbi Ben Zakkai. But we have claims where if the Gospels are being written, you know, pre-70, if they're being written pre-70, there's no reason why Jesus should be calling himself or anybody rabbi. But what does make sense and is more parsimonious is if people are writing in the mid-second century and now the Jewish people are using the term rabbi and they've gone away from the term sage, which is synonym. They've gone away from those words. It does make sense for them to start being like, oh, those are Jews, they use rabbi, and then they write rabbi in because they don't know any better because the
So
people
you're
writing are
saying
Jewish.
you're saying that the Jews use the term sage before rabbi?
Yeah, sage.
Okay. All right. Anything else? I'm gonna do a bunch of research before I come back. So I want you to list as much stuff.
Yeah, we can leave it at that. Yeah, I just leave it at that. Yeah. So what I would write is yeah, and just do some of your own research on it. Just look up historic or timeline inaccuracies, and you'll find that there's a timeline inaccuracy with the crucifixion as well. One gospel is going to say it was on Passover. Another gospel says it was before Passover. So just do researches on timeline disagreements in the Bible.
Gotcha.
So I look at that, and that should cover the 10-year gap. It should cover a bunch of timeline issues in it. You can look up anachronisms.
Okay.
You could also look up where Jesus doesn't quote things right.
Okay. In what way?
So in Samuel, and those who were in Justin's live earlier, I apologize. You gotta listen to a guy talk for like an hour on this. So in Samuel, we have where it says, David said to the priest Ahimelech, the king has charged me with the matter and said to me, no one must know anything about the matter which I send you with, which I have charged you. I have made an appointment with the young men for such and such a place. Now then, what have you at hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread or whatever is here. The priest answered David, I have no ordinary bread at hand, but only the holy bread, which is the Shoah bread, provided that the young men have kept themselves from women. So what we have going on is David in Samuel is going to a temple. He runs into Ahimelech, and he's with a group of people. He has companions with him, and they're wanting the holy bread. Now, when Jesus is telling this story in Mark, he says, and he said to them, have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and need of food? Now, he entered the house of God when Abiathar was high priest and ate the bread of presence. Right, so he ate the holy bread there. Now, the issue is Abiathar was not the high priest. In Samuel, it was Ahimelech. Ahimelech is Abiathar's father. Abiathar did not ascend to the high priesthood until after Ahimelech was executed.
Okay.
So like we have where, yeah, so look up where Jesus quotes the Septuagint wrong, because Jesus is quoting the Septuagint and he's quoting it wrong.
Okay.
And I grew up practicing Orthodox Judaism, and what I did that really helped me is I went and I actually read the entire Tanakh, which are the Jewish scriptures. I read it cover to cover, and I tried to read from it from as close to an unbiased source as I could. And whenever I looked at something, and I was like, huh, what? And that made me scratch my head. Not only did I go to my rabbi to talk about it, but I looked up, I'd spend like a week just researching that from both sides. And then once I came to the conclusion, Moses never existed, which for being Jewish is a pretty big deal. Moses never existed. The Exodus never happened. Like a lot of these stories are just Daniel was written right before the Maccabean revolt. Was written probably around 1 to 200 BCE. It wasn't, so meaning Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they never existed. Like, these are kind of like, I'm like, yeah, this is a book of lies. But just look, but what I'm saying though is look at it from both sides. Don't just study the apologetics on it.
When you say don't just study the apologetics on it and look at it from both sides, are you like, can you explain to me what you're saying? Because if I look at apologetics on some of this stuff, I'm expecting to also see like the aside from YouTube videos, if I'm reading articles, I'm assuming to see dates. I'm assuming to see historical stuff quoted. I'm assuming that I'll see things that I can also verify elsewhere. So
Well, so the
not
purpose
that
of apologetics. So the purpose of apologetics, apologetics never gives you an answer. What apologetics does is it says, well, this could be the case, and if it could be the case, then that's what it is. That's all they do. Just gives you it could
so
be the case.
okay. I have seen a lot of apologetics. I actually don't agree that that's what that is. However, just to make sure I have clarity, you're basically is the point you're trying to make is not only looking at Christian sources or
Yeah, I don't only look at Christian sources. I read what historians say. I read what, like, so for example, I'm Jewish, so I'll look at what Jewish historians say. I take because for example, we can agree that like if we go and look at messianic prophecies, right? You as a Christian are, if your Christian historians are going to have a vastly different view than Jewish historians are going to have on that, right?
yeah.
Right. So I look at both sides. I read the text. I look at both sides. I listen to their arguments, and then I look at what secular sources say. I look at what experts in the field say, who are both religious and non-religious, and then I look at which one seems to be most parsimonious.
Okay. Okay. And then do you have any do you have any particular websites that are a go-to for you that I should keep in mind?
I don't. I when I do my searches, I keep them broad. So there's not like any specific source I go to because I don't like to appeal to authority.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. All right, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Yep. Well, I appreciate you coming up, and Susan, thank you so much for. I know Maya got a little tense there, but I appreciate you still being super respectful. Thank you for coming up, and you're
No, I
welcome to
appreciate
come
you
up
too.
anytime.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, let's give Susan some W's, and I am going to call it their chat. You go ahead and get these screens of that I'm sharing. I won't worry about it. But anyways, chat, thank you all so much for hanging out with me tonight. It means a lot to me. I appreciate each and every one of you here. And real quick, let me do a check because I know with a few of those, I wasn't necessarily paying attention to super chats or anything. So let me go check. And I think I gotta stop cussing because I'm learning that more and more of my videos are getting a limited monetization. I think I gotta stop cussing. So yeah, so we had and then we had someone named Zane. Thank you so much for the $1. I appreciate that so much. Thank you so much. Someone named Zane. So let's give Zane and Juniper Berry. Those are the super chats for this live. Let's give them some massive W's. I always find it interesting though when Christians pay me to read their super chat. Like, I'll take it. I appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, and someone named Zane also sent another $2 super chat. I'm not seeing a message in there, but someone named Zane, thank you again so much for the $2. I appreciate it so much. Oh, yeah. That's what we were gonna do. So I'm gonna go read something real quick. I knew I was almost forgetting something. So I'm gonna bring something up on screen. I'm gonna bring up this verse. Trying to remember the passage. Here we go. This one will work. We're gonna go to. I'm gonna get this brought up real fast. It's gonna be Mark 11. We're gonna go to this time, I believe. See if we find this real fast. All right, we'll get this highlighted. We'll get this brought up on screen. It's going to be Mark 11. I've got it highlighted there. We'll get this brought down, make sure everybody can see it. So this is right after the fig tree incident. And what we have going on is they're walking to the temple. Jesus tries to get fruit off the fig tree. There's no fruit on it because it's out of season, and he curses it. And then the next day they're walking by and they're seeing that it's withered away. Peter mentions to him, "Hey, Rabbi, remember that fig tree you cursed? Look at it." And he says, "Have faith in God. Truly I tell you, if you say to this mountain, be it taken and thrown in the sea, it come pass." Boom. And then there's a similar passage with this in John where Jesus says, if anybody has faith and they ask for whatever, if they do it to glorify God, if they ask for anything, it will be given. So what we're going to do is I've got a monster can here, and I just want to make sure that the monster can be seen. So the monster can be seen. I can pull the lid off, right? So I can pull the lid off, no problem. So what we're going to do is I'm going to say a prayer. And we're going to do this for Juniper Berry. So what we're going to do is we're going to say a prayer. And what the prayer is going to be is that God will remove this cap. So I'm going to say this. And if this cap gets removed, Juniper Berry, I'll be back up here tomorrow. And we'll start in Matthew 1. And I will start reading the gospel immediately. Heck, I will probably end this stream and restart it immediately, and I'll just start praising Jesus. Are we getting a mezzo raid? Because I'm about to leave. I'm about to go to bed. Oh no. So we're gonna go ahead and say this prayer and see if God removes this cap, because we've got this passage up here. So it's everybody, just need you to bow your heads in silence. We need to take this real serious. But God, we've got Juniper Berry over there on YouTube, and he asked me to pray and said that you would answer it. And so I'm just saying, we have a bunch of people watching this right now. We've got a bunch of people on YouTube and a bunch of people on TikTok, and we've got Mezzo doing a Mezzo raid right now. And also, please forgive Mezzo. I know he likes to do some unique drawings, and please forgive him for that. But Lord, just to convince these people that you are truly the one and only God, please remove this cap from this monster can immediately. This will convince all of us, and it'll appease, again, Juniper Berry on TikTok. Amen. Juniper Berry, how long are we supposed to wait? Well, it didn't come off. It didn't come off. So, Juniper Berry, I tried. I prayed. Yes, Holy Mother, we may need to wait. We may need to wait like 2,000 years for that lid to pop off. It didn't happen. Juniper Berry, it didn't happen. And Juniper Berry does apparently seem to be anti-Semitic. Let's kick him right on out of the live. Take care of it, mods over there. Caps off in the spirit realm. That's goofy. But anyways, I'm going to call it a night. Mezzo, thank you for the raid. I appreciate it. But I do work in the morning. So I will see you all Sunday. I'll be live again on Sunday. I hope everybody has a fantastic evening. And let's go.
Plug in